Alright, cool. Alright, we should be going live now. I believe we are live, so welcome everyone. This is On Just Restart. This is a Nintendo podcast that I do. Brandon does it with me.
The Nintendo podcast.
The Nintendo podcast. Thank you, Brandon. And we do it every Sunday night around 9 p.m. Eastern time. We're doing it a little bit later today just because there's just kind of so much to talk about that I needed to give myself a few minutes to kind of read up on a few things because there's a lot going on. Obviously, I watched the Nintendo Direct. You guys saw it. It's there. We all saw it. It was a lot. There's a lot there. So we're gonna be talking about the Nintendo Direct. We're gonna be talking about Skyward Sword HD, those Joy-Cons, the lack of Breath of the Wild 2. We're gonna be talking about Pyra and Mythra and Smash Brothers. We're gonna be talking about Splatoon 3. We may mention a few other little things that showed up in the Direct as well. And then we're gonna sort of pivot into a lot of speculation and rumors going on with everything else. What didn't show up that should have showed up, for example. There are rumors for Donkey Kong and Metroid to come out later in the year. There are rumors that Breath of the Wild 2 might not come out this year, which is very disheartening to me. But we'll talk about that. It's not set in stone. We'll see. And obviously, there's also speculation in terms of what Nintendo actually has planned for Zelda's anniversary. Was this it, or is there more? So we're touching on that. We're also going to be talking about Switch Pro rumors and Mario Kart 9 rumors, and also Pokemon rumors, and I'm sure I'm missing something. There's a lot. Actually, I think Grezzo, the team that has come known as the Zelda Remake Studio, they remade Link's Awakening, they did Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D. They're apparently helping out with the Miitopia enhanced port that's coming to Switch as well. So there's that to consider. There's a whole bunch of different things going on. So, in other words, there's a lot to talk about, and I think it's gonna be a pretty good time because there's just a whole bunch to sort of dive into here. But before we do that, let's exchange formalities, greetings, and such. How are you, Brandon?
I'm doing good. This last week was both great for news, but like a lot of just stuff in my personal life happened.
Okay.
Because I'm sure, like, everybody knows there was that big winter storm.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I live right in one of the most affected areas in the country. So, no power, no water. It was super cold, freezing temperatures inside the house. It was crazy. But, got through it, and now it's 70 degrees outside. Because that's normal. 14 degrees. Actually, it was in the single digits in Texas, which hasn't happened in a long time. And now it's 70 degrees. Because it's Texas, and that's how weather rolls here. It does not care. It just swings back and forth.
You've lost power and internet throughout this last week.
Yeah,
you weren't able to watch the Nintendo Direct.
I did watch it. I had to watch it
through your phone. You couldn't like stream it or anything.
No, I didn't get to stream it. I streamed my internet from my phone, my data, onto my PC, so I actually watched it on my monitor. So that was nice. I didn't have to watch it on my phone. But no, I was gonna stream it, but no power, and then no internet. So
damn.
It's rough.
That sucks.
But now we're on the other side, and I'm like, okay.
It works. Everything works until the next snowstorm.
That was a week. That was quite a week.
Brandon, I'm sorry you've had to deal with that. I mean, we've been talking about it throughout the week, but I'm sorry. Hey, look, consider this, right? At least you got to watch the Pyra and Mythra reveal for Smash Brothers without interruption. If you guys were watching my live stream, I didn't know that the second audio channel just decided not to work. Just for the record, for you guys that are watching the podcast, I hope you can hear Brandon. I double checked, but if you can't, let me know. I'm not just talking to myself here, and there should also be background music. So during the live stream, I had background music, but no one knew that. and the background music is tied to just like the basic audio of my desktop, right? So when I would play the live stream, it would work. Just the same way how everyone can hear your voice, the same way the live stream should have been heard. Because we do the podcast every week, so it should have just worked fine. So I assumed that it would have worked, but it didn't. And I was like live for 45 minutes, and then when the direct started, because we did the pre-show, then direct started, and I saw clouds, and I was like, yes, Rex and Pyra and Smash Brothers. And then I looked at the chat, and they're like, we can't hear anything. I'm like, what? You can't hear anything? Oh no, this isn't good. And I had to fix it, of course. But meanwhile, I'm like seeing like the most amazing thing ever for me, and I can't watch it, or I could, but it was a mess. But I'm still really happy about what we got. Pyra and Mythra and Smash Brothers. You and I have been talking about it since 2018, and people didn't believe, but we did. We believed. Now, admittedly, whenever we talked about it, we talked about Rex and Pyra, and that would always include Mythra as well, just to be clear. But the idea was that Rex himself would be playable, and Mythra and Pyra would be playable as well. Like, it'd be a combination. Yeah. And there's some of that there. Like, we see that sort of mechanic at least alluded to with the final Smash, and he is in the taunts as well. So it's not like Rex isn't there. Like, Rex does have a presence, but it's not exactly how we thought. But point is, though, overall, it's pretty close, especially like with the switching mechanic between Pyra and Mythra. Like, it still does sort of match that blade changing mechanic we sort of thought of.
Yeah, it's pretty similar.
Pretty close, and I kind of like seeing Pyra and Mythra sort of like take the more of the star role here, because I mean they just have really cool designs, I think, and seeing them swing around those awesome blades, it's just pretty cool. But also, we don't know the full details on this character yet, right? Like when we get the Sakurai Presents in March, I expect there to be perhaps some surprise in terms of see how this character plays and what it can do and such. I wonder how the all skins will look.
Shown everything yet.
Yeah. So there's still more to learn about that for sure. But before we jump into that and everything else, because there's a lot to talk about today, as I said, the Nintendo Direct and a whole bunch of rumors. This is going to be a crazy podcast. There's just way too much to get into. But let me check in with the chat first, because again, there's just so much. But let's just see what's going on here. Ella Schmidt, hello. Koopa Slayer, good day. Can't wait to hear your opinions on Zelda and Pokemon. I'm so excited for the Switch this year. I'm glad you are excited for the Switch this year, and I hope to have decent opinions about Zelda and Pokemon, because I do have some. Hello there, Paul Dunn. Chris, hello, thank you for modding, as always. Beverly Carter, good day. Ronnie Fazio, D.E. Fox. Rescue Squad, hello there. Vooper, hi. Let's see. Abomination. Oh, you're at school. That's alright, man. Visible Broken, hello. Seahawks. Yeah, we're just getting started. Shane Himes. I would imagine they're saving the Breath of the Wild 2 reveal and possibly DK Metroid for an E3 type direct this summer. I'm inclined to agree with that. But there's a lot of different possibilities here. We'll be getting into that soon. Seahawks. I've heard Breath of the Wild 2 is well into localization. That's another rumor. It gives me hope, but also there's rumors that are positive and negative for Breath of the Wild 2. We'll be getting to it soon, guys. It's man. My brain's just been all over the place with this stuff. Hopefully this podcast helps me to sort of sift through it. It's been a Brandon's been talking to me, and I mean, Brandon, you I'm sure you can vouch for this. One day I'm like, man, there's so much to be excited about. The next day I'm like, it's just all remakes and ports. What's Nintendo doing? I've been all over the place, guys. But
it's been flip-flopping between
excited
and pessimism.
It's just I don't know. Like, there's obviously good stuff to play. Like right now, honestly, I've been enjoying my Switch very much. I just 100% of Bowser's Fury. I adored it. I adored the experience. It was fun. I don't know how many hours I ultimately put into it. I would say somewhere between 6 and 8 hours, maybe close to 10. It's just a range. Like sometimes I just leave games on, so even if I like check my Switch clock, it's not going to be an accurate representation. But it was sizable. I feel like for what it was, I felt actually it was surprised to hear that or find out that there was 100 shines in the game. I didn't expect that many shines in the game. So it's a sizable experience. Granted, you can get a shine like 1 to 5 minutes, but it's fine. Like some shines are a little harder to get than others, and it was still a really fun experience. I loved it. And right now I'm playing through Future Connected, so I am enjoying games on my Switch. Absolutely. But let me continue on with the chat here. Ask the truth. How many of y'all genuinely think Diamond Pearl Remakes are gonna be good? Oh. Well, it seems like you believe they're definitely real. By the way...
It is a very relative term.
Yeah, Brandon, I don't know if you saw, but I finally put out the video where I want to put out a gamble. Like, I've been alluding to this gamble for a while,
yes.
but I've updated the gamble. I made it a little bit more specific. So my gamble or bet is this. I am betting that Diamond Pearl Remakes will not come out. They'll come out for the holiday. That's my prediction. But I am saying that I think that they'll be announced by the end of this month. So we have a week. If by the end of the month they are not announced, I will go outside into the painful cold in Pennsylvania, and I will be basically nude. I'll wear shorts, maybe a Speedo, hopefully not.
Yeah, please.
I don't want to, but some people suggested I should. I don't think I will.
Do you even own one?
Not a Speedo. Anyway, I'm gonna be doing snow angels in the snow if I'm wrong. So, if we have to deal with the disappointment of not getting Diamond Pearl Remakes announced this month, look forward to my pain and suffering. But I feel confident that I won't have to do that. So we'll see what happens this week. But just putting that out there. Let's see here. Asters, why your hair always look wet? Well, it isn't always wet, but it is. It's not that wet. Maybe a little. I did take a shower when I got home like 2 hours ago. So it is probably a little moist. Let's see, I got a few ats. I'm gonna get to these ats and then we're gonna jump into the topics, guys. Computer robots, I have so many questions for you, man. How did you know that Pyra is coming to Smash? And did you predict Mythra is going to join Rex and Pyra, or just in case Pyra? Thanks for asking. The logic behind Rex and... I mean, I have several videos that have come out over the last 2 years predicting Rex and Pyra in Smash Brothers. And the idea has always been that it would be Rex and Pyra, but also you could switch to Mythra. So, as we already talked about it, Rex himself is in the taunts and in the final smashes. That seems to be it. He was obviously a part of the Smash reveal trailer. He had quite a presence there. He was a narrator for it, which was funny and cool. And obviously there's already the Mii costume, right? So it's not like Rex doesn't have a presence there. There he's a presence there. His model is actually like pretty much about as detailed as Pyra and Mythra as well. So, you know, he's in it, right? He's about as in it as he can be without actually being a playable character. I do have suspicions, probably wrong, but I do have suspicions that maybe there could be an alt skin where Rex just uses Pyra's blade and Mythra's blade, but it's still Pyra and Mythra as the main actual characters. I think it's possible, but I'm not expecting it. It's just like a possibility just based off... I think it's, again, possible, but I'm not really expecting it. But to go on as to why I thought that this would happen, there's a lot of reasons. One, Rex and Pyra are from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was one of the big games that came out of the Switch in 2017, along with ARMS. In the Final Smash Direct, Sakurai talked about how the reason why Rex wasn't in Smash Brothers is mostly due to time constraints. And Xenoblade Chronicles 2, there are interviews where Sakurai is talking about how much he was enjoying the game. So you have a strong fan base for the Xenoblade series. There was only one character with Shulk in there. It needed more representation. You have Sakurai literally saying that, yeah, this character would have been in if it was, you know, if time would have allowed for it. And he greatly loves the series. So all of those things were supporting Xenoblade 2 characters, right? But then going beyond that, with Fire Pass Volume 2, Brandon, you also agreed that it would have more Nintendo characters. It wouldn't just be entirely third party. And when we saw Min Min, okay, they put in an ARMS character, another game from 2017 that was not able to get into Smash Bros. Due to time constraints. So if Sakurai expressed interest in getting the character in there and wanted the character in there but couldn't due to time constraints, and we were already seeing other characters get in due to time constraints, it kind of all makes sense, right? So that was like the basic reasoning behind it. There's a few other details, but that was the basic reasoning behind it. And, you know, I just felt like that was the character that made, well, you know, between Rex, Pyra, and Mythra, those are the characters that made the most sense to push Xenoblade Chronicles 2, one of the bigger and newer games on the Switch. one of the more relevant, newer Nintendo characters. Like, if you're thinking about adding another Nintendo character, who are you going to add, right? Like, there aren't too many options left that are, in terms of, like, relevant, big, new, popular characters. Pyra and Mythra, that's a pretty good fit. And that's just, like, the basic reasoning behind the prediction.
Yeah. And Sakurai is just also an actual big Xenoblade fan. So I bet he was really wanting to get it in the game. I mean, he said so.
Yeah.
Beforehand.
Exactly. Makes you want it in the game. They're in the game. There you go. So, yeah.
I do find it funny that Rex isn't in there.
And they literally talked about it in the reveal trailer.
Yeah, and he was like, I thought I was going to be in Smash.
Yeah.
I thought that was actually really funny.
It was really funny.
It was like
it's
a twist that I don't think
it's a
really
Crom
expected.
moment, actually. You remember for when they revealed, I want to say Corrin and Lucina, and Crom was just knocked out?
Do not remember that, but I trust that it happened.
It happened. But then they were like, oh no, you were all in, but just in the final Smash. But then in Smash Ultimate, he was added as an Echo. So maybe in the next Smash game, Rex is added as an Echo, or my little theory that I don't entirely believe is true, and he's just an alt skin of Pyra and Mythra, which I think is possible, but, you know, don't hold me to it. I hope, but we'll see. But moving on here. Computer Robots, are you a little bummed that Rex is not a fighter? Pyra and Mythra look amazing. Rex is still in the game to some extent. That's fine. I'm just excited that this game is getting more love. I think it deserves more attention. When I got a second chance to watch the reveal trailer, I was actually like tearing up. I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch. I did it. I watched it live. So after the direct, I went back and watched it live with you guys, and I was tearing up watching Pyra and Mythra in Smash Brothers. I just thought it was so cool. The music, they just hit it right at the right moments. Seeing those cutscenes, it made me think Xenoblade 3 for a moment too. It was just a lot there. There's a lot of attention to detail. The models look amazing, I think. The moveset just seems like exactly right up my alley. Like, they're fast, hard-hitting. They got big swords, which is like that kind of that mid-range tier, which is kind of like my preferred sort of like character. So it's like Sakurai basically designed these characters specifically for me. That's how I feel. So I was just really, really happy about it. And it stirred up a lot of memories for me, because Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was a game I absolutely adored. When I played it back in December of 2017, I got fully absorbed into that game. It was a huge escape for me. It's one of my top Nintendo Switch games. I absolutely love it. Is it challenging? Yes. Is the combat system hard to learn? Yes. But once you figure it out, it's a magical experience. And it's one of my favorite games. So to see the whole series represented in the way it has been in Smash Bros. So far, it just makes me really happy.
I agree. It's one of my favorite Switch games. And that's to say, I gotta to answer that question. Am I upset if Rex is not there? No, I don't really like Rex that much. Just I don't really like anything about him. I don't like his voice actor that much. I don't really like his character in general that much. I don't really like his character design that much. So, but I love Pyra and Mythra. I love their character, their design. It's great. So to see them get the forefront and Rex just kind of like be left behind is like, oh, nice. And I feel like there's a lot of the fan base that agrees with me. We're like, we don't like Rex. I
don't feel the same way.
thing.
I like Rex, but I also love Pyra and Mythra. Like, I'm happy that I like the way they are, the way they're designed. Like, from what I've seen in the moveset and all, I think it works. I'm just hoping, as I said, that they have like an alt skin that has Rex just using their swords, and then they are sort of part of the taunt instead. Like, they kind of swap roles. I think it's possible.
That'd be interesting.
But again, that's not that big of a deal. I'm just happy that we're seeing Xenoblade Chronicles 2 love in there. So that just makes me excited,
sure.
And I really like what they're doing with the moveset. I think it's really, really cool. But, moving on, because there's quite a few questions I want to get to before we jump into the topics. Now, granted, thanks to you guys in the chat, we're kind of getting through some of the topics already, right? But
for sure,
there's a lot to get through. Hello there, Solidus. You thought the Direct was pretty good? I'm glad you felt that way. I think the Direct was... I was disappointed because there was no Breath of the Wild 2 in terms of gameplay for me. They did mention that we'll at least get more details later this year. We'll talk more about that later. But I think it was fine. I think the biggest issue for me... I mean, actually, you know, I'm gonna just say it. Like, when the Direct first ended, I said it was like a 3.5 out of 5 for me. I might dip that down to a 3. Maybe a 2.5. Now, that may sound bad. That's just middle of the road, though. It's like middle of the road. Let me explain. Okay, so it's not that I'm not excited for Pyra and Mythra and Smash. You guys who were watching saw me almost cry. Okay, I'm a grown man. Like, that made me really happy. So I thought, like, they started really strong. But at the end of the day, this is just DLC characters for a game that's been out for a couple of years already, right? So when you put that into perspective, how big of a deal is it actually? You know what I mean? But going beyond that, when you look at the actual games, there was a few smaller kind of games that I thought were pretty cool. A lot of it felt like it could have been like in a partner showcase, but it looks like Nintendo might be done with that, which is fine. It seems like they're kind of going back to more of the typical Direct style, which I actually prefer. Yeah. But just kind of considering like the big games that were announced, Mario Golf is cool. I'm probably not going to get it myself, but I know a lot of people want that. It looks pretty awesome, the way you can sort of roam around. Like, that seems like a really cool thing. But then going beyond that, we had Miitopia, which is an enhanced 3DS port with new content in there, and that's cool, but it's not even a ground-up new game. It's a 3DS game, and personally, Miitopia just doesn't really appeal to me, but just because it doesn't appeal to me doesn't mean I don't think it's good. Same thing with Mario Golf. It doesn't appeal to me, but that's still something that a lot of people are going to enjoy. And while I say I probably won't buy it, if I see it at a discount, I will, because I did like Wii Golf. I do like motion control golfing. I do like some of the mechanics I've seen with the story mode and the roaming around. Point is, though, like, those are basically like the new game announcements that they had. An enhanced 3DS port of Miitopia and Mario Golf. Going beyond that, we have Skyward Sword HD, which is cool. Something that we've also been talking about, predicting for 2 years. It's finally been realized, and it's pretty much exactly as I expected. Brandon, I'm pretty sure it's same as your expectations as well. But that's another remaster, right? We're gonna get back to Skyward Sword HD, by the way. I just kind of like talking about like my general feelings of the Direct. But going beyond that, it was Splatoon 3, and I skipped one big one. Project Triangle System or something. Project like,
Triangle Strategy, I think. Triangle
Strategy. And obviously they made more bunch of Monster Hunter Rise, but it's kind of already like a known quantity, right? They showed a little bit more about it, which, okay, good, but we already knew that was happening. You know what I mean? So in terms of like new announcements from Nintendo, I just didn't get like too many announcements of new games that I'm like, oh my god, I can't wait to get this, right? Like, there wasn't like an announcement of Donkey Kong or Metroid or Kid Icarus or F-Zero. Yeah. Like, things like that, or a new Xenoblade game or something from Monolith Soft, or another Astral Chain style kind of game, or Bayonetta 3. But there's so many cool games Nintendo could have announced. Star Fox, for example. Like, there's so much. We got an enhanced port of Miitopia and Mario Golf and Skyward Sword HD. Cool things, but only one of those three things is a brand new game. You know what I mean? And then beyond that, Splatoon 3 is huge. Splatoon 3 is huge. Absolutely huge. And so is Triangle Strategy. But here's the interesting thing about those two really cool, awesome games that they announced. So I'm not trying to take away from those two things. They're really awesome. I'm probably going to get both. The problem is they're both for 2022.
True.
So they're talking about 2022 games, but they're not talking about their second half of 2021 games. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess.
Why? So it's just kind of an interesting choice of games that they could have shown off. Like, there's other things they could have shown off that are coming out sooner. That's what I know that's the case. Like, I know that's the case, but when you think about the casual mainstream fan who doesn't necessarily pay attention to all of like the details and such, and doesn't know about all the nuances and things of what's going on within the industry, like, if someone sees that this Direct is about the first half of 2021, and that they may figure that they may tease a few things for the future, but when they show off things like Triangle Strategy and Splatoon 3 for 2022 and make no mention of anything in the second half of 2021, I feel like the optics of that is what's going on there. Like, is there anything for 2021? And there is, right? But it just kind of goes to the point I'm trying to make here is that I feel like they could have made better decisions to appeal to the Nintendo fan base a little bit more. Like, give us a little bit more to be excited about for what's to come in the near future. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to say the direct was bad. I just feel like it was average. That's all I'm getting at here. Like, people were waiting for a big brand new direct for over a year. It's been a year and a half, and what we got was an average direct. Now, if you compare it to other earlier directs, it's probably not. It's probably fairly comparable to other earlier directs. It's not an E3 style direct.
Sure.
It's not a September style direct. It's just, you know, it's kind of, I guess the sentiment I have is, I don't want to say, it's similar to too little, too late.
Okay. I do find it interesting that they showed off 2022 games because
Right.
I assume that they were going to show off stuff for like past the first half of the year, even though they said they were focusing on the first.
Yeah, because they do always do
Surely
that.
they're going to.
Yeah.
But like that, I mean, they do that at E3 all the time. Where they're like, oh, we're talking about stuff for this year, and then they show off stuff for next year.
Yeah.
But they don't usually show off things for next year this early, as far as I remember. At least not something this big.
Yeah.
Like, those are two pretty big games. Like, usually those are like Splatoon 3 for next year and Project Triangle Strategy for next year. Would it be like E3 style announcements? So I find it very odd that they showed it off in this direct.
Normally what they do is they announce one big game like a Splatoon 3, but it's for this year, right? And again, so here's the thing. I don't want to come off as like saying that Nintendo didn't do a good job, and I'm not trying to ignore the fact that there was a pandemic. I think it's very clear that a lot of Nintendo's plans have been pushed up significantly because of the pandemic. So that may have a lot to do why some people may be disappointed with Nintendo's offerings as of late, right? I get that. But they still could have shown off things that are coming out later this year as opposed to things that are coming out in 2022, you know? So that's just kind of strange why they didn't do that. Now, maybe they're not sure what they're going to do in the second half of 2022 yet, right? Maybe there's a plan there. I just feel like there could have been something else they could have chosen. That's really it. Like, I guess what it's exactly as you said, Brandon. Like, the Triangle strategy game and Splatoon 3 could have been E3 announcements, and we could have gone, like, whatever they're planning for October and September during this direct.
Yeah, I would have much preferred that, actually. But I think I'm not too upset about it because I do think there's going to be another direct in the summer, and we're going to get exactly that. The second half of the year detailed out. And
it's again, it's not. I'm not trying to sound like dull doom and gloom. Like, exactly, you're right. There's going to be more information. They are going to come out with games in the second half of the year, as they always have. Like, even during 2020 when things were bad and people were thinking there was going to be nothing, all of a sudden Nintendo comes out with several announcements within weeks, and we had basically an entire holiday lineup. Like, so, you know, don't worry too much about it, but in terms of like my direct feelings itself, I feel like it could have been better, but still there were some great high points. Triangle strategy, Splatoon 3, the Mario Golf game does look pretty cool. Pyra and Mythra and Smash Bros. Is really exciting to me, and I'm obviously excited for Skyward Sword HD, or at least I hope it's obvious because I'm a huge Zelda fan and that's finally coming. So I'm definitely excited for that. And Brian, you and I talked about this privately, but that Outer Wilds game actually does seem really cool.
Oh yeah, that game's super fun.
Yeah, like that's a very unique concept. I definitely looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, I think it's not that expensive either because it's just a little indie game, but the concept of it's super cool. Just been explore like this whole solar system, the world resetting every like 25 minutes. It's kind of like a rogue-like game, I guess, in the sense that you die over and over again and you explore a little more each time.
Yeah.
So super cool concept. So if you guys are into any like slow burning exploration sci-fi games, you should definitely look into it.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. But continuing on with the chat here, because I just think it's interesting how everyone's questions pretty much have become dedicated, like just topics, right? But continuing on, armchair analysis. What do you think will come with them in terms of Mii costumes? I'm pretty sure you mean with Pyra and Mythra from Smash Brothers. I think Nia is a high likelihood, and Is it Zeke? Pandoria's partner?
Yeah.
Zeke, okay. Because there's a Attack on Titan Zeke, so I was wondering if I was like misremembering. So I think maybe Nia and Zeke, for sure.
I'd like to see Zeke. He's one of my favorite characters.
God, what's her name? Bridget's partner.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I played Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in late 2017. Bear with me. Not Bridget. Jeez, I don't remember. I expect all of them to get, all the main characters to get it.
Morag.
You're right.
Thank you, comments.
Yeah, that's who. So I think those will be me costumes. Maybe they might throw in Malos as well.
Malos would be nice.
Malos would be pretty cool. Yeah. Why? Excited to hear your thoughts about Mario Kart 9. Whew. We'll be talking about it. Don't you worry, bud. Ella Schmidt. After we saw the Skyward Sword HD at the Direct, do you think that we'll see Breath of the Wild 2 still in holiday this year or early 2022? So, a lot of this kind of ties into the second part of this discussion because there's a lot of rumors we're going to be covering later tonight. I'm not sure. I would have, if it wasn't for the rumors, I would have assumed that Breath of the Wild 2 is still holiday of this year. Yeah. And I think it's strange. Like, I'll say that, man, this podcast, I might sound like a hater because I continually have critiques, but I feel like it would be bad if Nintendo cannot come out with Breath of the Wild 2 by holiday 2021. Just in the sense that this is a sequel using Breath of the Wild as a foundation. That should expedite development at least by a year. And they started development back in 2017. We're already in 2021. So it's interesting because if Breath of the Wild 2 ends up coming out sometime in 2022, it's like they didn't even have a base to start with. It's basically the entire development of a typical huge Zelda game. So it's just kind of interesting how things are sort of turning out. And I guess my criticism isn't that they're taking long, okay? Because a lot of that does have to do with the pandemic. My criticism would be that they should not have revealed it so early. Definitely. I'm glad I got the news. It was an exciting moment, but maybe they could have just focused on something else instead and waited a little bit longer. Like, what if we didn't get Breath of the Wild 2 announced until last year, for example? The wait wouldn't have seemed so much less painful, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of strange how we've had to wait so long to get information.
I remember that E3, I was like, man, they did not need this announcement. Because that E3 2019 was already, like, ridiculously good.
Yeah.
And then it ended with Zelda, and I'm just like, my mind was blown. It was like an 11 out of 10.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, Breath of the Wild 2, I think, has the potential to be an even better game than Breath of the Wild 1. And, I mean, that could basically mean it's the greatest game of all time. Like, it has that kind of potential, so I understand that Nintendo wants to be careful with this and do an incredible job. I get that. Absolutely. I just think that maybe they should have been smarter about when they announced it. Because they could have ended things with the Banjo and Kazooie reveal. No one would have batted an eye, and they would have said that this is still one of the best directs ever. You know?
Yeah.
Like, they didn't need to do it. I'm glad I got it at the moment. It's just it's been so long of a wait. But, you know, we'll see what happens, right? Maybe the rumors are saying 2022, not even fiscal year 2021, like fiscal year 2022, which means at the earliest April 2022. And that could extend even until early 2023. I don't believe that. I'm not sure. I hope that doesn't happen.
I don't believe that for a second.
But there are rumors suggesting it could take a lot longer. Like, we could be more than a year away from Breath of the Wild 2. But there's also some rumors suggesting the opposite, that it's nearing completion in terms of localization, which implies that they're done with the game and they're just working on localization, which means it should just be a few months away from being gold. So it's kind of hard to say what's going on here, but we will be diving into it, absolutely.
Yeah. Ronnie
Fazio. Now that Pyra and Mythra are in Smash, are you personally 100% satisfied with the Fighters Pass 2? Yeah. Yeah, I am. literally every character pretty much I've been dreaming of is there's Gino, but I mean, it's fine.
Just
He's a Mii costume, so he's there in that capacity. Got Ridley, King K. Rool, Banjo and Kazooie, Pyra and Mythra, Smash Brothers. Like, these characters are characters I've been dreaming about for years, and they're all in there. Like, I
think this is the biggest amount of new characters to a Smash game that I've actually cared about. Like,
yeah. Like, I personally don't care about Steve. I personally wasn't in love with. I thought Joker would be cool, but when I actually played it, it's just personally not the moveset's not for me. But overall, there are characters like I actually really love Biles' moveset as well. But overall, I am just really happy with the roster, and I'm not complaining about Steve, for example, or Joker. I understand that they have to appeal to different people, so it's entirely fine. But even within that all that variety of characters appealing to different people, Sakurai still managed to get all the characters that I've wanted the most. So I'm personally very satisfied, and there's still 2 more spots left. I have no idea what they're going to be. Well, ideas, but that's nothing I'm like convinced of, right? I'm fine. Like, this is it. I mean, maybe Impa would be nice. Like, that's, if we're gonna get a Nintendo character, I feel like Impa would be a good fit.
Impa would be great.
Yeah. Going beyond that, like, there's nothing else that I'm like, man, it'd be really cool if this character got into Smash Brothers. Personally.
There's characters that I would like. The only character that I actually really want is Doomguy. There's other characters that I think would be cool.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Yeah, cool characters, but nothing that I'm like dreaming about,
Doomguy or Master Chief, I would be ridiculous.
If they announced Master Chief, I would scream for that. That would be pretty hype. Yeah, that'd be pretty sick. But that's just never even been a hope for me, because
I definitely don't think
it's the Mario of Microsoft.
There's already 2 Microsoft characters.
Yeah, who would have thought, right? So I feel like with Smash Ultimate, with with everything surrounding that game, the lead up to it, the content of the game, the characters, the DLC, 10 out of 10. That's the perfect, magnifique, moi, perfect. I'm happy.
Oh yeah,
super satisfied. Moving on with the chat though. Computer Robots, I want to say thank you and Xenoblade fans for requesting Rex and Pyra, Pyra and Smash, because I got to see Xenoblade Chronicles 2 cutscenes and I fell in love with the characters. If you see, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is an amazing game that I think is
so good,
underrated. It's
heavily.
So the problem is with Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is that, one, there is flack that it gets on the internet because it's anime characters and the girls are way too bodacious, but like, the characters are really fun characters. Like, they have really great personalities, they all have backgrounds, and you fall in love with these characters. And it's not just bodacious women, there's all sorts of other characters. They're just really fun, unique characters. And it's a really cool story in a beautiful, like, sci-fi fantasy world.
Oh yeah.
And for me, it was an escape, and I really enjoyed it. But another, I guess, challenge with Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is the combat system. Once you learn and understand the combat system, I think it's one of the best RPG combat systems of all time. It is just super engaging and deep, but it's really hard to kind of figure out. The tutorial system is not great, so that's it's kind of been a barrier of entry for a lot of people. But if you get by that, there's an amazing game behind that barrier of entry. So I think more people should give it a try.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think the combat system's the best out of any of the series, except I think Torna kind of...
Yeah, you really like Torna because it kind of like smoothed it out a little bit for you. It simplified it a little bit, but it was still very engaging throughout the process.
Simplified it in some ways, and then added newer elements in others.
I did like it as well. I thought it was fine. For me, it wasn't necessarily better. It was just kind of like a nice little variation to keep it fresh.
Yeah, I would say if you want to get into Xenoblade, you might want to play Torna first. I don't think that ruins the story because it's a prequel. So
no, it doesn't. It doesn't really ruin the story. That's an interesting point. And I'll also tell you that because it is a little bit more simplified or accessible, they kind of it's a better tutorial for the combat system.
Yeah.
So it can kind of get you up to speed a little bit better that way. I think that's a really good perspective there. And Torna is basically its own release. It has its own physical release. You can play that game. It could still last you, if you go for all the 100%, it can still last you 40, 50 hours if you really want to go for every little thing. It's more like a 20-hour experience for most people,
yeah,
but
I'd say 20 to 30 hours, and if you want 100% it, maybe like 35 to 40.
Okay. Yeah. It's definitely maybe a good way to get into it, but once you do that, I think it'll be easier to get into Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and it's a magical experience.
It's absolutely fantastic, both of them.
I mean, Brandon, I know you've always enjoyed Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but I feel like lately your opinion of it has been a little bit higher than what it has been in the past. Maybe that's just my memory playing tricks on me, but I'm just curious, is it because you've gotten a chance to revisit Xenoblade Chronicles, the first one, that you're now like, you know what, Xenoblade 2 is really good?
I don't think my opinion really has changed that much. I appreciate the combat system a little more after going back and replaying X a little bit, and
I think the thing with Xenoblade 1 it's great, but it does show its age.
Yeah. The combat's way too simple. You're just waiting a lot of the time in the original. Same with X. But
I'll say that in Future Connected, because I've been playing with Melia, I'm barely waiting around.
That's good. Well, they changed. There's a new combat system for that compared to the.
It's basically the same, but the game prioritizes Melia. So I didn't really play through Melia in the main campaign, but it's still simpler. It's not as complex as Xenoblade 2. But it's still pretty good. I do like the mechanic in this one because it's a little bit less luck oriented. In Xenoblade 1, there's a lot of luck involved. The chain attacks, you need to get kind of lucky to get like a really high ranking attack, and there's still luck involved. It just seems to be minimized a little bit, which I personally prefer.
Yeah, but my overall opinion hasn't really changed. I still think the first game has the best story.
Yeah.
While also having a good world, but the worst combat system. X had the best world, the worst story, and the in-between combat system. And 2 has the best combat system, the worst world, in terms of like exploration, not in terms of like motif or anything like that. And then the middle of the road story. It's still amazing, but I think 1's better. I wouldn't say middle of the road in terms of like how good it is, but compared to the 3.
Okay. But let's move on because we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's still
I've got a lot to talk. We're barely scratching the surface here. Let's see here. Cortex. They didn't want to show Breath of the Wild 2 until they could show it for the first time running on Switch Pro, and they couldn't show the Pro yet until the new edition sell. So that's a very good point, and that does give me some hope. I mean, I guess I'll talk about this part later, and we'll address the rumors later into the discussion because I want to get like all the direct stuff done first. But I'll tell you that because Nintendo, in my opinion, already started that transition of talking about Mario stuff and moving on to Zelda stuff, and because of the timing of Skyward Sword HD, and because of what you just mentioned related to the Switch Pro, I do feel like there's still that door open for Breath of the Wild 2 to be the big holiday game. So, looking at what we got for Zelda, right? Yes, today's actually the anniversary for Zelda, by the way. So, congratulations, Legend of Zelda. It's your 35th anniversary. We will be talking about you throughout the evening. It's going to be great.
Best franchise in gaming, period.
Absolutely agree. The 4 things we got, and Brandon, disagree with me if you may, or if you must, but we got 4 Zelda announcements in this Direct. Okay? Hear me out. Age of Calamity DLC, right? Skyward Sword HD, special Skyward Sword Zelda Joy-Cons, and confirmation that we will be getting news at another event for Breath of the Wild 2 later this year. That may not seem like that big of news, but confirmation that we're getting actual specific details about this game, which means a blowout later this year, I think is actually pretty huge. So it's 4 Zelda announcements, in my opinion. Do you disagree with that?
No, that makes sense.
So the point I'm trying to make with that is that that's more of a Zelda focus, or that's more attention than any other franchise got in this direct, in my opinion. So while it wasn't a Zelda Anniversary Direct, there still was a fair bit of discussion and acknowledgement of Zelda. So they did do that. It would have been strange to do pretty much nothing for Zelda for the 35th anniversary. They did do something. Now, they didn't mention the anniversary, sure, but I think a lot of that could be tied to Breath of the Wild 2 and when they're ready to show that game off. You know? And
yeah.
The interesting thing about that is that maybe they are also waiting for when they're ready to announce a Switch Pro. And considering that we're getting the Mario Switch this month and we're getting the Monster Hunter Switch next month, it makes sense for them to wait a little bit before they announce that Switch Pro. When is that happening? There's a lot of debate there right now. But there is this widespread belief that Breath of the Wild 2 and the Switch Pro will be tied together. That seems to be the thing that most people are coming to an agreement with. Now, there are still people who don't think a Switch Pro is happening. Okay, it's not out of the question. But I think it is happening. There's so much with that, but that's a whole other discussion. Point is, though, it does make sense to think that Nintendo is holding back for potentially that reason. That could be the case. It would make sense because we had that Age of Calamity announcement, and in that little mini presentation, Eiji Aonuma showed up and said you'll have to wait a little bit longer for Breath of the Wild 2 news. And then in this Direct, we have to wait a little bit longer for Breath of the Wild 2 news. So you gotta think that probably by this summertime, at the latest, I would say, we're finally gonna get details on that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's still within the realm of possibility that they could have a huge E3 blowout and it comes out for the holiday. I think that could happen. And considering that they may just be holding it back to have a huge blowout for it, have it be the focus of an E3 presentation or a treehouse or what have you, maybe show it off alongside Switch Pro with the improved visuals and stuff, and have other Zelda anniversary things ready to be announced at that time, that could happen. But they also could maybe wait a little bit longer too, as some rumors are suggesting.
Yeah, I agree with your point you made before.
Okay.
Which is that him implying that there's going to be news is going to be a blowout. I think the news he's referring to, and we talked about this privately, but I said, like, I'm pretty sure the news he's saying isn't, like, just a teaser trailer or something like that. I think it's going to be the big blowout with the name and everything about it and the release date, like the exact release date and all that good stuff. So, and I agree that will probably be in a... I hesitate to call it an E3 thing because I don't know what they're going to do with E3 or what even is happening with E3 this year, but an E3-like presentation during the summer, I agree, is when that will happen.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this as well privately, is like, man, mid last year when we were talking about when Zelda would be shown off, and I was under the impression, and my like general consensus was that they wouldn't show it off till E3, that they wouldn't show like anything. I was like, people were like, oh, but don't you think they'll at least do the announce of the release date? And I was like,
they did mention it.
Yes, but I don't think they'll mention it.
Yeah, I mean, I was inclined to agree with you that maybe it would be like another teaser trailer, right? Just confirming like more information or like a release this year. We didn't even get that, right? We just got there'll be more news later this year. So I wonder though, like I wonder if by doing that it does suggest that the game is not coming out this year. You know, like I think we both agree that it suggests that when we do get the news, it's gonna be like a huge blowout, similar to how they did for Breath of the Wild 1. But because they didn't like have like a hype trailer saying, "Oh, holiday 2021," like, you know, it's hard to say.
I think they just don't want to announce a release date and have to change it because they changed the release date 2 or 3 times for the original Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're like, okay, this time we're gonna wait until we
now
blow
they
it
just
out
don't
and
talk
give
about
the
it.
name and then give the release
The
date.
difference is now they just don't talk about it. At least then we got like several like little snippets. Now it's just like,
Yeah.
we'll talk about it someday.
I think they wanted to just change how they talked about
Yeah.
this game versus the original.
Sure.
and not
That's
mislead
fair.
people.
I'll tell you that because Skyward Sword HD is coming out in July, to me, that's like, wait, why are you coming out with a Zelda remaster only months after the release of Age of Calamity? Like half a year after the release of Age of Calamity, you know? Like that's... If this is going to be the big Zelda game of the year, then wouldn't they wait a little bit longer? You know what I mean? Like, it makes me wonder if they have other plans. And I think most people agree that there's other plans. But I guess my point is that because Skyward Sword HD is a summer game, that leaves the door open for a bigger Zelda game to come out for the holiday. I just feel like Breath of the Wild 2 is like that ideal game, right? If they are going to go all in on celebrating the anniversary, like it makes sense for it to come out for this holiday. But if it's not ready, it's not ready, right? Like, so, you know,
Yeah.
that's the tricky part.
This is the tricky part. But I gotta say, like, I mean, we're gonna talk about it with these rumors, but I just don't see the game coming out past this fiscal year. I kind of maybe could see it getting pushed to like
March
very early,
2022.
yeah, like March. But I don't see it coming out of this fiscal year.
Yeah.
I just don't.
But here's the other thing about March 2022, and we've talked about this already. I think I've mentioned in some of my videos already, but I want to talk a little bit about Splatoon 3 in terms of like the release date thing again, because it's weird that they would announce that so early. I think if the game was further out, they would not have announced it. Like, my feeling is that if Splatoon 2 is a 2022 game, then maybe it's a early 2022 game, you know, like to close out the fiscal year. Otherwise, to me, it would be kind of nonsensical to announce it this early. That's my thinking, at least, on there. Most of the time, Nintendo doesn't do that. Zelda's like the exception.
I think it would definitely be like a first half of the year deal.
Yeah.
Maybe come out in May. The original Splatoon came out in May.
Yeah, but the Splatoon 2 was also announced like 5 months before it came out. So, you know.
That one came out in July.
It is a great summer game, don't get me wrong. So to have it come out around then, that does make sense. I'm definitely inclined to think that this Splatoon 3 is not... It's coming out in 2022 because they told us that, but I definitely think it's like, for sure, like a first half, I would say, but we'll see. Yeah.
Definitely first half.
I guess my thinking with that, though, is that if it ends up being a March 2022 thing, then that would imply Breath of the Wild 2 is not going to be a March 2022 release, you know? You don't put two big games like that right next to each other. So it would either mean that Splatoon 3 is coming out later and Breath of the Wild 2 is 2022, or they're both like not coming out. Like, there's several different considerations there, but I'm just saying I could see Splatoon 2 come out March 2022. I could see that happening to be like the big game to close out the fiscal year. It's similar to how we're getting Monster Hunter Rise this March, and then last year we got Animal Crossing. Like, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's been some really big March games.
Yeah. But let's continue on here. Actually, this is a relevant question. Solo Jones, what do you think will be new or add to Splatoon 3 for it to warrant a sequel? Fantastic question.
It's a very good question.
I'll say that from what we've seen, it's clearly taking place in a different environment. There is also a clear emphasis on the Salmonids. So I do think they're probably going to expand Salmon Run significantly. I mean, even if you go back to early last year, there was like a teaser trailer with an SOS regarding the Salmonids. And here we see the Salmonids like a companion character to the Inkling. So I'm not sure how that impacts the gameplay. I don't know if that'll even impact the multiplayer gameplay. That would be interesting, though. I wonder if they have like another whole other mode that's tying in the Salmonids. Maybe like it's like a huge... Like, I don't know. There's a lot of different things they can do. I definitely think they're going to expand on Salmon Run significantly. From the gameplay we've seen, Brandon, you pointed this out to me, that you can kind of like do sort of like a little bit of a Fortnite thing where you can kind of like pick where you want to land on the map.
Yeah, they got those like what even are those that you pop out of? Like
There's
little washer machines.
I don't know what they are.
Weird.
Some metal floating square cube and
Yeah.
it shoots you out. And you pick where you want to land.
You can choose where you want to land, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, for sure. So it's clear that they're doing some different things here. I don't know how different it is going to feel, because it is an interesting thing to consider that given that we're seeing Splatoon 3 on the Switch and we already got Splatoon 2, like, are they going to do...
I was not expecting it till
the
next gen.
Especially
considering the developers just like a year or two said they were not working on it.
Right,
So,
that's strange,
wow.
but we also talked about repeatedly that it will be weird for them to skip the rest of the generation without not having something Splatoon, right? But we were thinking like a Splatoon spin-off, because to your point, the developer said they weren't working on Splatoon 3 yet. But here it is. So, either they lied or maybe they changed things up. Maybe it was a spin-off at one point and they decided to make it just Splatoon 3. You know what I mean? Like, maybe they were planning on having it being like some sort of huge, like, salmonid kind of game. They're like, you know what? Let's just make Splatoon 3. It's hard to say. But you brought up an interesting point, though, because you mentioned that you weren't really expecting Splatoon 3 until the next generation, right? So this game's coming out in 2022. Where in 2022, it still remains to be seen, but we're both speculating early 2022. Or at least first half, somewhere around there. If it's coming out in 2022, this big brand new game, what is Nintendo planning for their next generation system? Like, if the Switch Pro is going to come out either this year or next year, that's supposed to be a mid-gen refresh. Like, what's going on? Like, it's kind of strange.
That's a good point. Because you think they would want... I mean, you don't really... A lot of people think, I think currently, that the next-gen Switch might come out like 2023. But why would you launch a big new multiplayer game a year before the launch of your next system?
Yeah.
Unless there's going to be like a deluxe version, like Splatoon 3 Deluxe or something, on the next system. Or it just works on the next system.
I don't know. The other thing is that Breath of the Wild 2 is delayed until 2022. Like, that's another game, right? And then, of course, there's Prime 4 that still hasn't come out yet. And the way things are looking, we might not see that for a while. It's strange. And then, of course, we just got Bowser's Fury. Like, so I feel like, where is the next big 3D Mario game? And of course, you haven't seen the Mario Kart 9. So you have all these big Nintendo games. It just kind of makes you wonder, like, what's Nintendo's plan here, right? Because we've talked about it.
Yeah.
The teams that came out with games in 2017 are all now nearing completion on their next big projects. Splatoon 3, Breath of the Wild 2, like, you see a trend, right? We got Splatoon 2 in 2017, we got Breath of the Wild in 2017. What's going on, So it's definitely a little perplexing. I do think some of the rumors may shed some light on this potentially, but I think what's clear is that what's going on with Nintendo is unorthodox. I think whatever they're planning for their revision or next generation system and their lineup for both is not within the pattern we've seen in the past. Because what's going on right now is very strange.
It is very strange. At this point, I'm kind of thinking we might not see... I mean, it depends. If we see a Switch Pro this year, I'm going to say we probably won't see the next gen until 2024. But if there's no Switch Pro this year, I'm going to say they're not doing a Switch Pro, and they're just moving on to the next Switch in, like, 2023.
But here's the other thing, though. 2024, like, can they really go 7 years without a next-generation system?
I think they can if they have the Switch Pro, if it's a good enough boost.
Right, but the base games still need to be able to... The base Switch still needs to be able to run everything.
Yeah.
At an acceptable level. Like, it can't just, like, run it at 140p, at 20 frames per second. Like, that can't happen. The games have to look and play basically the same. Obviously, there's... I mean, Brandon, I know there's a different attention to detail for different people, right? Like, for example, you wouldn't want to play Doom at 720p 30 frames per second. You'd prefer to play it at least 1080 60, right? But 720 30 is still playable. It's still fine. Like, whatever the base Switch is running, it can't be so far behind that we're talking about, like, like a lot worse than that, you know? Because there's also the portable version. Like there's docked and undocked. There's varying settings here. I'm just saying, like 7 years is a big gap before they move on to the next generation system. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just simply saying like that's a long time, you know? So there's a lot going on here that's I would say is unclear.
I'd say that's probably only an issue for like third parties though. Okay. Obviously Nintendo's not having any issues with their hardware.
Yeah, I'll say that one consideration, and we'll touch on this a little bit more later once we get into the rumors, but there's a possibility maybe that what they're doing is that this next Switch isn't like a next gen Switch, but it's kind of a thing where maybe Nintendo starts to adopt a different model of how they handle their software and hardware, where it's kind of more like iPhone, where games are kind of like continually compatible for multiple system revisions years on, and they just sort of like slowly revise year by year. I don't know how that works long term though, because if the base Switch exists, like eventually you have to phase that out, you know, in terms of compatibility. I would say you can't go 15 years supporting like several different like Switch SKUs, you know, and have that base one still working that much long afterwards. So it's hard to say how exactly it's all going to work out, but there could be something along those lines that they're maybe playing around with. There's still a lot to sort of sort through, but let's continue on here. Let's see, oh no, I did not catch up with the chat. There's just a lot not loaded. Oh boy.
Oh god.
Yeah. Let's see. Super Chris, it's just Melia, not Amelia. I know it's Melia. I never.
He didn't say Amelia.
No.
Why would
Yeah. Let's see here. ASAP Bro, Mario Kart 9 is bigger than Zelda.
Technically yes. In terms of sales, but in terms of hype, not really.
I don't know.
I think Breath of the Wild 2 also could push more units than Mario Kart 9.
Because the thing is, there's already Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Switch already. So for most people that they already have their Mario Kart, it's sort of like satisfied. So I'm not sure if that's a given that Mario Kart 9 would outsell a Breath of the Wild 2 on the Switch. Like I'm not saying it wouldn't. It's hard. I just don't think it's set in stone actually, because when it comes to like adventure games and sequels, like it can be treated a little bit differently in terms of like how many people buy that game versus something like Mario Kart where it's an evergreen thing. Once people have like that main entry, it's one of those things like you buy one Mario Kart. Mario Kart's the kind of thing like you buy that one for that one system, you know what I mean? So now that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is owned by a lot of people, is Mario Kart 9 still going to sell like several million? Absolutely. This is going to be one of the best selling Switch games. I do not doubt that. But if Mario Kart 9 happens, but I just wonder if it would actually be bigger than Breath of the Wild 2, because Breath of the Wild 2 could also be a 20+ million seller. So it's
I'm gonna go ahead and say Mario Kart 9 would outsell it.
If Mario Kart 9 comes out for the next Nintendo system, I 100% agree. I don't know. I just think they're both huge. They're both gonna sell 10+ million. So yeah. And then also, but in terms of to your point earlier, Brandon, in terms of like hype or messaging and marketing, like in terms of like pushing hardware, like more powerful hardware, like a Switch Pro, Breath of the Wild 2 is a bigger deal for that. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're both huge. Moving on though. ASAP Battle Royale in Splatoon 3. That would be an interesting way to kind of mix things up a little bit. Have that as a mode. I wouldn't mind. Let's see, I got a super chat from Taker610. Thank you very much, Taker. As long as Breath of the Wild 2 is taking, I'm starting to think the Switch Pro will be more like a Switch 2. I could see Breath of the Wild 2 being a cross-gen like the original. Based off some of the rumors, I don't think it's a bad take. I don't know at this point. There's a lot of variables. It's hard to say. I do feel like that whatever this next Switch SKU is, Breath of the Wild 2 is probably coming out pretty close to it. What did you say, Brandon?
I just don't think that it's going to be like a sort of Switch 2. I just don't think it's going to be strong enough, and then I don't see why they would do that either.
I don't know either. There's a lot going on here. I don't think it'll be. I don't think it's gonna be called Switch 2. Like that's not what I'm thinking. But it is. I think we are in a situation where the Switch is not gonna have the normal 5-year life cycle of the older Nintendo system. Like there's gonna have a longer life cycle. I mean, it's definitely gonna be more comparable to maybe a 3DS or a Wii. Perhaps 3DS is perhaps the best comparison. And I think this next Switch though will probably take up. It may become like the primary Switch. Like if you look at how Nintendo handled the new 3DS, they sort of phased out the original 3DS and they started marketing and pushing the new 3DS as kind of like that main system. That may happen, and it will be more powerful, so games will run and look better on it. And that will help them to sort of be more relevant moving forward. And a lot of people who may have a base Switch may feel like upgrading so they can have the best looking or a better looking, better running games. And so it won't be like a Switch 2 like actually, but I guess like it is becoming like increasingly more of a blurred line situation. Like what is a next generation? What is a mid-gen refresh? Especially if you have a lot of cross like gen games, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of hard to. There is a bit of a blurred line situation going on here with like the different like systems. Like you look at PS5 and PS4 and PS4 Pro, right? Like a lot of the games that are coming out for PS5 will also be coming out for PS4 and PS4 Pro as well, right? So it's
true.
I think as we're progressing as a whole, the industry, it is that transition is changing. It's becoming a bit more smooth, perhaps. You know, it's not like, oh, okay, system's done, games are done, buy a next system so you can get more games. New system comes out, your games may still work on that system, may look better and run on that system, but you can still stick around with what you have for years moving on because it will be supported for a longer time. Like it is changing, so it's gonna be interesting to see how Nintendo handles that moving forward. I'm not sure because this is kind of uncharted territory for Nintendo.
Yeah, true. I mean, they've really not done systems with that much like cross-gen games. Like cross-gen games on Nintendo hasn't really been a thing. So there's been a few, like, you know, you got Breath of the Wild on 2 systems, you got Twilight Princess on 2 systems, but for the most part, I mean, that was just one game for literally the whole generation, and then they didn't do any other games. Like, there's no games on Switch that were made for the Switch and then also on the Wii U or any other system for Nintendo. So it is interesting if they're going to move forward in that direction. I would be fine either way because I kind of like the hard reset for the next gen. It also means that typically you get better looking games at launch because they're not focusing on worrying about the last generation. They're just specifically trying to get as much as they can out of the next gen, so I like that. But I wouldn't be too upset if they went more of the cross-gen route either.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna have to see. But I do want to kind of continue on with the chat here, or just a general discussion. There's one more question I'm gonna take, and then we'll kind of summarize everything else that we didn't like sort of talk about with the direct stuff, and then we'll move on to the rumors.
Yeah.
I guess we haven't really talked about this part yet. Freddy68 asks, do you think Breath of the Wild 2 will sell more or less than the original? I think inherently, because it is a sequel, it has a disadvantage in terms of sales potential.
Yeah.
So it probably will not sell more than Breath of the Wild 1. Breath of the Wild 1 is the best-selling Zelda game of all time. It is selling incredibly well. I think it's like at 22, 23. It's well north of 20 already. I mean, we were talking about this a few weeks ago with quarterly reports. What was it at? Like, I know it did over 20. I just don't know how much over 20. I probably could just Google Breath of the Wild sales, right?
Probably.
Breath of the Wild Switch sales. Okay, as of December 31st, 2020, Breath of the Wild on the Nintendo Switch has sold 21.45 million. But there's also Wii U sales.
Oh, yeah, Wii U sales.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a couple million, maybe.
I think at least a couple million there. Let's see if I can get to Wii U. Will it tell me? Show me Breath of the Wild sales?
Probably won't be close enough in the top 10.
It doesn't. It's not in the top 10, which means it's like at most 2 million. But still, like it's like at least 1.5 million, I think. Point is, it does put it around the 22, 23 million range, right? That's huge. That's a huge amount of sales. Like, it's just crazy. Can Breath of the Wild 2 surpass that? Probably. It would be.
I think it has potential. It has an advantage that it will start with a much higher install base when it releases. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the Switch hits near 100 million by the time that game is out.
A lot of it comes down to how it's marketed, right? Like, they're not going to call it Breath of the Wild 2, for example. It's not going to have the 2. It's going to be called The Legend of Zelda something else, whatever that something else is. And by doing that, it's just another Zelda game, right? It's not like the original Legend of Zelda is the best-selling. No, that's not how it works. So there's that potential. And if they launch it alongside the Switch Pro or whatever it ends up really being, then, you know, that's going to greatly assist in sales depending on the success of that system. Now, it's not likely that whatever that version of Switch is going to outpace this Switch or outsell this Switch, but of course people who have this Switch will also buy that game as well. So there's that. And depending on how good this game is and how it's marketed, there is potential. Like, it can technically beat Breath of the Wild. It's not out of the question. I mean, look at what Animal Crossing has accomplished. This game hasn't even been out for a year, and it's at 31.18 million as of December 31st.
Just crazy.
Right. So, you know, it's possible. Depending on how big and amazing this game is, how it catches on to its various audiences and social media and such, and how Nintendo pushes and markets this, and how the varying different Switch SKUs are performing and how they perform moving forward alongside this game, it has potential to maybe someday pass Breath of the Wild. Is it likely, though? I'm going to say it's not likely. I want it to happen. I'm rooting for it to happen because I think Breath of the Wild 2, whatever it actually ends up being, could become a better game. I think it has the potential to be the greatest game of all time. Like, that's how good I think it could be. And I think if it is the greatest game of all time and Nintendo pushes that appropriately, it should sell better than Breath of the Wild, you know? But that's not how it works all the time. There are incredible games that don't necessarily sell better than other more mainstream games, you know? So it's hard to say, but probably not, but there is that chance.
I'm going to actually say I think it might. Just thinking about how many Switches will be out there, I think it will end up being an absolutely amazing game, and I think they'll market it very well. I think the fact that it won't be called Breath of the Wild sequel or Breath of the Wild 2, or I don't think Breath of the Wild will be in the name at all.
Might not.
Should help it a lot, and just the hype and revere that the original has, I think will get it to sell really well. So I'm gonna say there's actually a pretty good chance.
What is pretty good chance? Is it over 50%? You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Like I feel like it's more likely that it doesn't, but I also don't think it's like
I'm gonna say
out
50-50.
50-50.
50-50 chance.
Yeah. I'm rooting for it. I want it to happen, but I'm gonna say 25-75. It's like 25% chance it does, 75% it doesn't. Like that's just my feeling, and I want to be wrong, but we'll see what happens. Either way, it's gonna sell really well. Like that's a given. It's gonna sell really well. So it's not really something to be too worried about, but we'll see. But anyway, let's move away from the chat for a little bit, and you know we focused on the chat because you guys had great questions, and it still pretty much talked about a lot of things we're going to talk about anyway. But what have we not sort of touched on about the Direct? I mean, there's obviously a lot of smaller little games. Personally, that I mean, the high points for me were Pyra and Mythra and Smash Brothers, Splatoon 3. And Skyward Sword HD. I mean, actually, we haven't really talked too much about Skyward Sword HD. We just talked about it coming out in July. So let's talk a little bit about that. Skyward Sword HD. I mean, Ryan, do you want to give me your thoughts first?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely gonna get this because I think it's super interesting. They haven't confirmed if there's going to be any extra content or not, but personally, I don't really care. I've been wanting to replay the game normally. I think it looks really good in HD, and I think the thing I'm most shocked and excited about is the fact that they did something that Nintendo rarely ever does, and they actually improved the frame rate. It's gonna be the first 3D Zelda game to run at 60 frames per second, which is insane.
60 frames per second, 1080p. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
This game's gonna be buttery smooth.
And that's gonna help with the motion controls if people want to use that. Obviously, there's the right stick now, which is pretty cool. Yeah. But if people are like, oh, I want to try out the motion controls, it should work a lot better. Not only is the tech and the Joy-Cons just a bit better than what we had the Wii remotes, you also got 60 FPS, so that's gonna make it a lot more responsive. Your controls gonna be picked up a lot better. So I think that's a pretty big game changer for this Zelda in particular. Like, I'd love to see 60 FPS in Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, but I think it's even more of a factor for this game, especially if you want to use the motion controls.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy that there are non-motion controls. Like, I'm sure that the motion controls are gonna be great. I will probably try them out, but I'm pretty sure for the most part I'm gonna be focusing on playing this game with just dual analog control. So I hope it plays fine, and they actually took some time to optimize for it. But pretty much all of what they explain is they just map the sword controls to the right stick, which there was no right stick on the Wii because we had one stick. So it's fine. It'll work out, in theory at least. So I'm really curious how the game will feel just doing sword attacks with that right stick. But I mean, I think it'll work out fine. I was a little worried that they wouldn't do it and they would just only have the game playable like in docked mode or something, like it wouldn't work for Switch Lite, which would have been a bad idea. So I'm glad that they did this. We were predicting that they would, but there was that concern that they wouldn't, right? So they did do that. So I'm happy about that, and I'm kind of with you. I'm not really caring about them adding additional content, which is not confirmed yet, right? We don't know. So I think it's important to point out that we don't know all the details about this game yet, so I'd be careful to make assumptions. But
they didn't even talk about quality of life stuff. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of improvements, not showing you the item in your inventory and giving you the description literally every time you pick it up.
That'd be nice.
Even if you've picked it up before in the game.
Yeah, shave down some of the fetch quests a little bit. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Offer
hero mode from the beginning.
And they did all these kind of things for Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, so I'm sure they'll do it for this game too.
Yeah. Here's the thing. If Breath of the Wild 2 doesn't come out this year, then I definitely feel like Skyward Sword HD should have some sort of additional content in there. Something like a Bowser's Fury or a Future Connected, which does seem to have become the new standard for enhanced ports and remasters for Nintendo, where they add additional new areas and gameplay to explore, a little bit more story there, right? Like that's become a cool little thing. Going this last year or so, where Nintendo hasn't really been able to output a lot of like brand new games. At least we've gotten things like Bowser's Fury and Future Connected, and that's been some of the best content I've been able to play on my Switch in the last year. So I've really appreciated that. So if this is another year where we can't get all the biggest, best games from Nintendo, I at least hope that they keep that in mind and that they do offer additional content with things like a Skyward Sword HD. However, I don't think they need to do that, especially if they have a lot of big games planned for the second half of 2022, potentially including Breath of the Wild 2, which is not, I mean, I'm at 2021, but point is, like, there's still that chance that Breath of the Wild 2 could come out holiday 2021. It's not set in stone. We don't know. Rumors are suggesting otherwise, but we'll see what happens. But if it is coming out for the holiday, it makes sense to not really have that additional content in there. Like, it makes more sense for Skyward Sword HD to be just what it is, a clean sort of HD remaster that's pretty much to par with Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's a lot of people on the internet arguing that Skyward Sword HD should not be $60.
Ah, yes.
If they had that additional campaign, I think people would probably not feel as bad about it. But I'll give you that Nintendo does things that aren't necessarily like consumer friendly. That's I get it.
My take on it is that I definitely agree that compared to other companies, Nintendo does the least amount of effort and charges the most money for all of their remasters and remake efforts, which is not great. But at the same time, I don't really mind. I think it should be 40. To be honest, to be fair, like if I wanted to give it like a price that I think would be fair, like $40 would be, I think, a lot more fair for what this game is offering. But I don't care enough to be like super upset about it.
Yeah,
like, I agree, it is overpriced, but I also don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is, like, if you want it, you buy it, right? If you don't think it's a good value proposition for you, then don't buy it.
Yep.
I guess there are a lot of people out there that like don't feel that it's worth it for them, and I understand that, especially if you played the game before. If you don't have that strong itch, then don't go for it. For me, I'm probably gonna do it just because I'm a Zelda sap. So I'm going for it.
I'm very biased, by the way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I will say though, I was kind of thinking that there'd be some sort of bundle deal for the Joy-Cons and the Skyward Sword Remaster. It doesn't look like they have that. They're kind of expecting you to buy them separately. That's a big oof.
Very expensive.
That is pretty anti-consumer, I would say. Granted, if you want it, you go for it. It's a collector's item. I want it. I may have lost my opportunity. I didn't realize the pre-orders were going to go out so soon. But maybe I'll find some when they come out on the market.
I did not get a chance to get those.
Yeah, I really wanted them. But we may still be able to find some later down the road. Either way, though, I am excited to play this game again. I'm getting that itch. The game looks clean. It's at 60 frames per second, which I think is something that is not being talked about enough. Because a lot of people are harping on the price, but the game is at 1080p 60 frames per second. That's a first for Zelda. That's a big deal. And this game is also portable. That adds a lot of value to it, right? Like, a lot of people look at previous systems, and those systems were only, it was either portable or not, right? Games on the Switch inherently have more value because you can play them in two different ways. So I feel like that's something else that should be considered as part of that value proposition. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there's that. And, I mean, it's still a big game. Skyward Sword is a big game. So, I think it's gonna be worth it for most people. Like, most people are gonna buy this game and get at least 50 hours of gameplay out of it. At least. So, yeah. I think it's fine. Like, there are games that are only like 8 hours, right? And you pay $60 for it. There are games that are $70 and you pay that much. Of course, this is a remaster, right? It's an old game that's been enhanced, but it's looking like a solid remaster, though, from what I've seen so far.
It's fine, yeah. But I'm not gonna say that I don't agree that it's overpriced. I just also don't really have that much of an issue with it.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously would prefer it to be a little bit cheaper, but I'm still gonna do it. It's still worth it for me, but I understand why some people may not do it. I mean, I don't buy every single enhanced port. I wish Pikmin 3 Deluxe was cheaper.
Buy most of them.
If Pikmin 3 Deluxe was 20 or 30 bucks, I would have bought it, but I didn't feel like paying 60 for it. So, you know, I'm not trying to say that you should just waste all your money. I get it. If it's not worth it for you, don't go for it. But because of how big of a Zelda fan I am, and because I do like what I see, I am going to go for it.
Yep.
Looking at the chat here, D. Fox, Nintendo Prime talked about how we can expect Ocarina of Time HD and Majora's Mask HD this fiscal year. That's something. When you say HD, do you mean basically 3D All-Stars HD? Because if that's kind of HD, I can see it happening. But I do not expect remakes. That's not happening. No.
I wonder how much they would change. Because it's not even the right... If you do it off like the 3DS version, it's not even the right aspect ratio. So would they crop it? Would they change the aspect ratio?
They might
I don't know how hard that would be.
I don't know. I do think that there's a good chance that if there's a big Zelda anniversary plans, that they're gonna re-release at least Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask is also a good bet. I mean, that brings us to some of the rumors, actually. Like, there are people saying that Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD are coming to Switch this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how Nintendo packages that. We have seen trade markings for Ocarina of Time and Phantom Hourglass. We've seen trade markings for a whole bunch of merchandising. There's clearly Zelda plans, I would say. I mean, we know there are Zelda plans. Onuma told us that they're going to be telling us more about Breath of the Wild 2 later in the year, which suggests a blowout. So, you know, there's a lot of plans for Zelda. I'm not sure how it's going to all come together. Brandon, I mean, recently I put out a video, and I think you kind of agree with me, but maybe not, that it feels like we're probably going to get a summertime presentation, and this summertime presentation will likely be the E3 Direct or something along those lines, and it could very well have a big Zelda focus. It's during these times where we've seen Nintendo have these big deep dive blowouts like they did with Breath of the Wild. So maybe they could do that. They could talk about other things there. And if you consider the timing here, it's a month. If it happens in June, as E3 Directs usually do, that'll be a month before Skyward Sword HD, which gives us another look at that game if they have any things to announce, like the quality of life enhancements and things of that nature right before it comes out. And also the Age of Calamity DLC, the first wave is set to come out in June as well. So they could kind of like maybe shadow drop that during a big E3 Direct that focuses on Zelda. You know, like that kind of...
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. You know what I mean? Like, imagine watching the E3 Direct. Maybe they devote the first half to, like, everything else. And then the second half, they're like, all right, Zelda time. And they're like...
Zelda time.
And they start off with Age of Calamity DLC. And you're like, oh, you can play... They show off actual content instead of just, like, graphics, like, actual, like, footage of the game. And you actually get to see, like... you know, the actual footage of what this is going to be, like the characters, the gameplay, the items and things, like what it's actually going to be. And they're like, okay, you can play as this and get this right now. And then they move on to the next thing. Like, that makes sense. So my thinking is that there will be an E3 Direct that will have a Zelda anniversary focus this June. That's what I'm thinking, but there are some rumors suggesting that there's still going to be an actual Zelda anniversary Direct. I'm not sure. Given how many Zelda announcements we got during this Direct, I feel like we're going to have to wait a few months. And if we're waiting a few months, might as well just wait until June.
Yeah, I think that I think they want to show off Breath of the Wild in like a big presentation with a sequel. Yeah, I think it's going to be a big blowout. I agree. In the presentation, I don't know if it will be a specifically Zelda 35th anniversary focus, but I mean, inevitably Zelda's gonna have a focus if they talk about Breath of the Wild 2, because they're gonna need to blow it out and really like talk about all the highlights, and they could dedicate 10 minutes of the.
I mean, I'm looking forward to that treehouse.
Just to Breath of the Wild.
I'm looking forward to that treehouse. Man, I know they won't do it, but I would love it if they could just drop a demo for us to play.
That'd be amazing.
Like,
no, they're not going to.
Well,
the data mining on that demo. Oof.
But they've done it for other games like Splatoon and ARMS. Why can't they do it?
Yeah, because those are multiplayer.
Well, no, hold on.
Nobody cares as much.
Hold on a second. Who's to say Breath of the Wild 2 won't have multiplayer in it?
No. But it's not a multiplayer online game. You know what I mean?
But
like
what?
That trailer,
or
any demo they release, I think they would fear spoilers because it could get data mined and just completely.
Sure, but what if they just have like an online-only time trial kind of thing, similar to that, except you just play on your own. You just have to be online to do it. Like, well, what's the actual difference? You know? Like, why can't they have like a test fire, but for Breath of the Wild 2?
I don't think.
I'm not saying again. I'm not saying that they will. I'm just saying that why can't they? Like, ask why can't they? Like, how different is it?
I just don't think that they care to. Because the only real reason they do the Splatoon and ARMS ones is to test the online.
That makes sense. Right. They want to test
that
to see how it works. That's important. You don't need to do that for a single-player game. I totally get that. Makes sense. But how nice would it be if they did?
Oh, it'd be amazing. Yeah. Like, dude, I want that. Hell yeah.
Unless there is a lot of multiplayer components of Breath of the Wild 2, and they need to test how the servers work.
Well, I don't know if I want there to be a lot of multiplayer components.
Well, I don't know, dude. They're taking so long with this game. They got to be doing something weird with it. Like, this is not... Whatever they're doing with Breath of the Wild 2, it's definitely crazy. I'm not saying it's going to be multiplayer. I don't really want multiplayer in my Zelda games, but I'm just saying, like, they're doing something crazy with this game. But checking in with the chat here, D Fox, I forgot to mention, he said there's going to be from Grezzo. This is in relation to the HD Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask. So
I mean, they worked on those originally. So. Yeah,
we've worked on them before, so that's not out of the question. I will say that we did get news that Grezzo is working on the Miitopia port. You know, there's that, but that doesn't mean they can't work on more than one thing at once. Apparently, the hirings that Grezzo was doing for a medieval action game is not for this Miitopia. So
it's not.
No, that's what this article is suggesting from Nintendo Life here. So it may be the case that, you know, that they're worth hiring for some sort of Zelda game, maybe a Zelda HD remaster or something. You know, could be. That's medieval-ish. I mean, I would define Zelda as fantasy medieval. Yeah. So that might be the case. Ice Sonic, do you think there's a possibility for a Kid Icarus Uprising port or sequel? It is this franchise anniversary this year. What are your thoughts? Is there a possibility? Yes. Is there a plausibility?
Also, yes.
No. The difference being like possible is like, is there like a 1%, 2%? Sure. Is there like a 30, 40% chance? I really hope so.
I'm pretty sure the chances are under 5%.
Yeah.
Very, very low.
Like, someday we will get a Kid Icarus game, right? Someday we will get an F-Zero game, I feel. Like, we will eventually get to see these games again, these franchises again. I don't know. I'll tell you this, I was thinking about it the other day. Like, had Grezzo decided to do an HD enhanced remaster port of Kid Icarus Uprising as opposed to Miitopia, my opinions on the direct would have been very different. So, you know, that may make me sound a little bit like a hypocrite because like they're basically two 3DS ports that everyone liked, but I care way more about Kid Icarus than I do about Miitopia. I mean, I'm just gonna be real with you. Like, I feel like the core Nintendo fan base will agree with me on that, but there is a lot of people who do like Miitopia. So
you know, to give Miitopia a slight bit of credit, it's not just a straight 3DS port. They did remake all of the assets in HD. So they're not the 3DS assets at all. So that's nice.
It's
not like they just threw the game onto the Switch. It's like a remake, reimagining of the 3DS title.
If people define Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition as a remaster, it's a remaster.
Yeah.
I don't want to get to that
That game is a
conversation.
remaster.
Point is, it was on 3DS, and they are rebuilding, enhancing, remastering, what have you. And I'm sure a lot of people are excited about it. It's just not personally for me. I would have loved to have seen a Kid Icarus Uprising, and Grezza would have done a great job of it. So, maybe someday they'll do that. Maybe next year we'll get a Kid Icarus sort of announcement in a February Direct instead of Miitopia, But we'll see. ASAP Row. What if Nintendo does a Breath of the Wild 2 E3 presentation like it did for Breath of the Wild? That's exactly what Brandon and I are talking about. That's what we're kind of hoping for right now. Hello there, Khalil Morgan. How you doing? What's up, Jugs McGee? Paint Fat Purple Atomy. You don't appear to know that the Grezzo is working on three Zelda games thing. They are hiring for a new one for later on because they finished the remasters. Rumor. They could be working on the next 2D Zelda. I think there's definitely a possibility of that. So maybe. I did hear something about Grezzo working on a few different things.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of rumors circulating right now. A lot of them. So maybe that they are working on a lot of things. I'll say, though, that we haven't seen Grezzo come out with that many games in the past. So to think that they're now all of a sudden working on 3 different projects... HD projects, mind you.
Every couple of years.
Yeah, so that's where I become a little skeptical. Like, maybe they are testing out some ideas, but I find it weird that Grezzo would all of a sudden be making 3 different big projects. So I'm not sure how much I believe that rumor, but there were apparently hirings for something else that was medieval fantasy related. Maybe that's the Zelda thing. We'll see. But let's move on here. Is there anything else you want to sort of address specifically with the Direct before we start talking about rumors, Brandon?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I think we are doing okay-ish on time. I mean, it's almost 11, but I think you and I both expect this one to be a little bit of a bigger discussion.
For sure.
So maybe around the halfway point, maybe somewhere around there, slightly past it. There's a lot of rumors. I'm not even sure where to start. You know what? Let's just start with a big one. Let's just start with a big one, and then we'll kind of go from there. So this is coming from, and again, guys, I apologize. There's a lot of rumors circulating right now. I haven't had the time to kind of like check just how credible each of these people are that are reporting them. I had heard other people sort of report and say that there's credibility there. So, I think they're at least worth discussing. I'm not sure how credible they are, though. So just keep that in mind. I mean, regardless of whatever rumor it is, regardless of how reputable that person has been, take it with a grain of salt. But let's get to this one right over here. Let me see if I can show it to you guys. This is from Reset Era, just for the record. Info. There we go. All right, there we go. So I think I should be able to see that. So this is coming from Zombie, right? Hopefully you guys can read it. So just to sort of update people reading through the thread. New model is still very much tied to Breath of the Wild sequel. Still possible for this year, but is internally moved to fiscal year 2022. Meaning the new model might slide into early next year. Parentheses, I think that is a mistake because the hardware would sell regardless. End parentheses. Splatoon 3 was delayed into next year, and Mario Kart 9 was leaked by 10K, which was the game I heard was coming this holiday that I've mentioned a few times. The dev kits have only recently gone out to third parties is my understanding, and I've actually just seen something that's supposedly from one of those dev kits that has a Switch game running at 1440p, which is higher than Switch output. It isn't a screenshot of the game, but a setting profile that shows a Switch platform and 1440p as the resolution. It is a third profile outside of portable and docked. So I think of it as a docked Pro. It doesn't detail other profiles, but likely a portable profile exists as well. A78 and Ampere are both being shared, and Samsung is an open secret for the fan production from at least the sources I'm talking to. Well, that's what I've heard anyways. There's a lot of interesting stuff that will start leaking over the next couple months. I just hope the model comes this fall and they don't wait until next year to get a perfect lineup together. Switch needs a boost of new hardware to maintain momentum this year. So that's the big rumor, and I feel like there's a lot there. So I think based off the wording, there could be perhaps some errors there potentially. So Zombie saying fiscal year 2022. If he means exactly that, fiscal year 2022, that means April 2022 to March 2023.
Right.
That is a long time from now. And I mean, they could drop Breath of the Wild 2 in April 2022, but I mean, if it's going to be in the next fiscal year, they're probably not going to drop it in April.
And he seems to, or they seem to be referring to something that if it was fiscal year 2022, it'd be like just barely, like a month or two in. Because they do say that they think it could come out this year and might be pushed like a few months into next year.
Right, and that's the thing. So if this person proves to be very credible, I'm not saying they aren't. I just haven't seen too much from them myself, so I don't want to like say, hey guys, trust this person, you know. But yeah, there is that. It doesn't seem like, from all the rumors that we've seen, it doesn't seem like it's set in stone either way. So, you know, if you do believe the rumors, you could take solace in the fact that it's still not set in stone. There's still hope that Breath of the Wild 2 could come out for the holiday. And I'll say that if Breath of the Wild 2 is being pushed out of 2021, it makes sense for it to be like that big fiscal year ending kind of game. So March, not April. And maybe come out with Switch Pro then. The interesting thing about that is then we're now talking about Switch Pro coming out 2022. That'll be 5 years after the launch of the original Switch. Exactly 5 years. Which is also a strange thing for me to consider, that that's when Breath of the Wild 2 could come out. 5 years afterwards. It's a sequel using the same engine. They'll probably improve upon it, but normally sequels take 2 to 3 years. So it's just strange that if that ends up happening. And it may, you know, it's hard to say, but it may. I want to point out, just for perspective, that Sony is planning to release both God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, the sequels are both big games this year. And Horizon Zero Dawn came out around the same time as Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
and
I don't weeks before or something ridiculous.
Yeah, and that game is huge, right? And there's a lot of detail with the visuals and such. There's a lot to work on there. And it was
optimized for next gen hardware. So
it also had a very significant DLC on top of that.
Very extensive DLC.
I would say probably more significant. Exactly. I'm not a Sony guy, so I don't know all the details here, but I'm not even sure they started developing immediately with Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, for Breath of the Wild, we were told that late into the year, like, that they were already working on the next big Zelda game. So, you know,
like in December.
Right, exactly. So I guess the point here is just for perspective, like, if Sony can get their big games done, and they're arguably doing it in less time or similar time, and their games are, you know, there's more detail there because, you know, more powerful hardware. I'm just saying it's comparable, right? Why can't Nintendo? Now, you know, maybe Nintendo had to deal with more issues than Sony. I mean, their studios are located in different parts of the world, and the pandemic impacted different areas in different ways. So that's something else to consider, right? For sure. So, you know, maybe that's why we have to wait so long for Breath of the Wild 2 or maybe the Switch Pro. I hope that's not the case. I don't want to wait much longer because I feel like it's been such a long time. But obviously, when the game is ready, the game is ready. Now, I'll say that apparently from Game Over Jesse, someone who apparently has sources for Zelda, Also, I personally haven't seen this person get that much right. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying I personally haven't seen all of that, so I'm not sure just how credible. So a lot of people think that they are credible, so just take that into consideration. But they're saying that from what they've heard, that Breath of the Wild 2 is going through localization right now, and it's been going through localization right now. So that kind of goes against what these other people are hearing, that it might not make it this year. Like localization doesn't take over a year, from what I understand. So I'm not sure what to believe.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, strange, right?
It's a lot of conflicting evidence.
Yeah,
I'm not liking it.
Who do we
now,
believe?
What does seem credible to me is that Nintendo may not know if they're going to have it launch this year or early next year, but I think that's the only way that they wouldn't know. I don't think they're like, oh, is it going to get pushed all the way to, say, mid to holiday 2022? No, I don't think that they're worried about that. I think they might be like, oh, is it going to be like a November title, or is it going to be a March title, or something like that? And they're not quite sure. I mean, they didn't give us a release date.
Yeah.
And they could have very easily, even if it was literally just, hey, Breath of the Wild's coming in 2021, you'll get more information later. They could have done that, but they didn't.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It may not be set in stone yet, for sure. Just checking with the chat here, because I think some people are speaking onto the credibility of some of the rumors here. Paint Fat Purple saying they have done the past. Watch Game Over Jesse's video. Okay, I'll make sure to check that out later. So maybe there's some credibility with that one, right? Nintenjosh, I believe Nintenjosh is speaking on Zombie. They're saying, I'm pretty sure this guy is a verified insider. So here's the interesting thing, guys. We're talking about two different people who are saying two things that seem to be opposites of each other. Which one's right?
Yeah.
So that's now maybe I'm making the assumption that localization should take less than a year, right? I don't believe I'm wrong in that, but if anyone has any information on that, let me know.
Within the last few months.
Yeah. Birdman saying here, for Age of Calamity, it took 3 to 4 months to localize, coming from a voice actor from Age of Calamity. 3 to 4 months. But that's from one voice actor. It's different languages, though, right? So, I'm not sure. That's something to look into. Actually, maybe I can Google that quick. How long did it take to localize? I can't spell Breath of the Wild. Let's see what comes up in the Google. The Google. Okay, they're saying 5 years, which is the development time. So Google got it wrong. Thanks, Google, for being useless.
Google, for nothing.
Yeah, useless. But yeah, again, my understanding is it usually takes a few months, a handful of months, not a year and a half. So, but either way, though, we're having two different rumors that I feel like they're a little bit contradictory. And again, guys, as I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, there's a lot of rumors going on right now. I haven't had time to really look into detail with everyone, see the credibility and the track history of all these different people and things of that nature. And we'll be kind of sifting through all this information as time goes on. So we'll be coming back to this stuff for sure. But I do want to kind of touch on a few other things as part of this rumor, because Zombie here is also mentioning Mario Kart 9. Now, what's interesting about that is that someone that I do know that has pretty good information is Nate Drake. You might know him as Nate the Hate on YouTube. And this is what they're saying about the Mario Kart 9 aspect of this rumor, or from what they've heard in relation to Mario Kart 9. So here, someone was asking, no other insiders have any input into Mario Kart coming this year? This is what Nate Drake said. In 2018, I heard talk of a new Mario Kart entering development, but details were limited. Could have easily been confused with Tour or Live. No matter the outcome there, we are due for announcement from the Mario Kart team in the near future. And there's something else I want to point out here. Someone else I saw. Just another insider, Zippo, basically backing what Nick Drake said, I believe. So, you know, two insiders that I've seen gone a lot of things right in the past, like Skyward Sword HD, 3D All-Stars, things of those nature. They're saying, from what they've heard, the Mario Kart 9 thing isn't necessarily set in stone. And with rumors like this, sometimes it is, oh, we hear of a Mario Kart in development. Oh, it must be Mario Kart 9. You make an assumption that it's Mario Kart 9 because you hear of Mario Kart in development. It might have just been live circuit, you know?
Yeah, there was a lot of Mario Kart things that came out. So.
Right. Look at Star Fox Grand Prix, for example. There is the Starlink DLC. That might have been, you know, so
that's my personal theory.
Yeah, so there is a possibility here that even if the source is credible, what they're heard is a little bit of a misinterpretation there, right? It happens all the time, actually, very, very often. And I don't mean this in any way to be disrespectful or to discredit any sort of leaker or what have you. But for example, Emily Rogers, who has shown to have a pretty good track history of knowledge of things to come, I remember they were talking about the next version of the Switch, that quiet revision, right? The one that came out alongside the Switch Lite. And they were talking about maybe there being some new colors and some new packaging, like it would be represented a little bit differently. That was more of their interpretation from what they've heard and what they were thinking. Kind of a prediction based on what they heard, not actually what happened. Like there was a red boxing, but it was the same exact looking Switch, and there wasn't really much marketing to it. It was a very, very quiet revision, right? There wasn't new colors or anything like that. And so the reason I'm simply bringing it up is just that, you know, oftentimes insiders only get pieces to the puzzle. They don't get the whole picture. And sometimes they're forced to kind of make some assumptions or make some interpretations, and they might not be entirely true. Or plans simply change because they're getting information before it's fully finalized, right? So there's different things there. They could kind of, you know, give you more reason to take it with a grain of salt, regardless of how much you may trust the source. You know what I mean? Sure. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's just development's fluid. Things happen. You don't have a lot of times very clear information, so it's easy to get the wrong idea or to accidentally give out wrong info if you start to let your own bias and assumptions get in the way.
Yeah. I will say, though, to the point that was brought up from Nate Drake, and is that, yeah, the Mario Kart team has been working on something. Okay, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was a remaster port thing made somewhere else. The Mario Kart 8 team worked on ARMS. That came out in 2017. Yes, they had DLC, but DLC doesn't take all of their efforts, and they were finished with that They've been done with it for years at this point. So they've definitely been working on something for a long time, since 2017 probably, and we're now in 2021. We are not far off from seeing what they've been working on. Conceivably, it could very well be Mario Kart 9. 100%. And if it is Mario Kart 9, I'll tell you, I will be happy to play a whole bunch of new tracks, try out some new mechanics. I've been waiting for some new Mario Kart tracks for a very long time. I was actually, I love Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It's one of my most played Switch games. But I do wish they had new tracks to race on. They never added that, right? They did the battle stuff, which a lot of people appreciated. Not my thing personally. But I've definitely been itching for like new tracks to race in Mario Kart. So I will be very happy to see a Mario Kart 9. I think it would sell really well. We talked about earlier in the podcast. It likely would outsell a Breath of the Wild 2, just because in general Mario Kart outsells Zelda. But you know, Breath of the Wild 2 ends up being something that outpaces Breath of the Wild 1. I also could see a situation where Mario Kart 9 doesn't necessarily sell nearly as well as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. You know what I mean? So it's possible. But either way, you know, I think it'd be a really great game to have. But I also am not committed to the idea that it absolutely has to be Mario Kart 9. Imagine if they were to make something new. How exciting would that be? What if they were to make F-Zero or a new Wave Race? Or what if it's not even a racing game? You know? Like, they could do something really special. They've done it before. I would love to see what else they can do.
Yeah, I'd be down for an IP. I don't really think the Switch needs another Mario Kart. I think it could use a Mario Kart 9 if it's like different enough. Maybe has a campaign mode, a new engine, a lot more diverse cast of characters from different Nintendo franchises. I think there's room for Mario Kart 9, but I think there's also definitely the possibility that they just go with a different racing franchise or a whole nother different genre in general. I think that could be nice because we do have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and it's not really a Switch-only Mario Kart. It's pretty much just Wii U Mario Kart with a battle mode that's actually good, but it's still sold over 30 million units. So,
and I like HD Rumble. I like that it's in 1080p.
Yeah, that's all.
I like the double items. I like the turbo drift boost. Like those are all cool little additions.
That weird frame rate glitch.
Right, because Mario Kart it was actually 59 frames per second or something, right?
Yeah, so it would stutter every second. There'd be a small micro stutter.
It's interesting.
It's really annoying.
But yeah, I love the game. I would love to see a Mario Kart 9. I'm just based off. I feel like what we discussed though. I feel like it's not entirely. I'm not super confident that Mario Kart 9 is happening. It's definitely a possibility because we don't know what that team's been working on. They could be working on the next Mario Kart for sure. But they also could be finishing up on a brand new IP or a revived franchise, and it could do incredibly well on Switch. And then they could be and then they could now be starting the planning stages for the next Mario Kart, so it could be ready for the next generation Switch. So they could have that be a launch title then.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say.
I think that would be better overall.
Yeah.
Instead of coming out with a Mario Kart 9 on Switch in like 2 or 3 years when the next gen comes out, just launch Mario Kart 9 then.
Yeah, I do want to point something out that's interesting. So if we go back literally about a year ago, like around this time or January, there was a big rumor that came from this supposed leaker, Sabby. Some of you may remember the person. The persona. This person had developed some level of credibility amongst us on the internet, and they were saying that they were hearing that Mario Kart 9 was going to be the big holiday game for 2020. This is before we knew about the pandemic or anything like that, and they were saying that Breath of the Wild 2 initially was planned for holiday 2020 but was pushed up. That's what they were saying the beginning of 2020, 1 year ago. Well, what has proven to be the case is that person, from what I understand, no longer does leaks like that anymore. People, they were kind of found to be a little bit of a fraud. And basically they just stole information from others, the other leakers. That's apparently what I heard on that. And I'm not trying to throw any shade. I'm simply saying what's been said and heard. They're no longer really talked about amongst like credible leakers or anything of that nature from what I've seen. And that rumor that they talked about completely not true. There was no Mario Kart 9 in 2020. There still hasn't been any Mario Kart 9 announced. And Breath of the Wild, if it was even debatable for a holiday 2020 game, why hasn't it shown up yet? So it just seems like that rumor was entirely bogus. But what's interesting about it is that we're basically in the exact same situation now related to the rumor. The rumor is that, Breath of the Wild 2 was planned for holiday 2021, but it's been pushed up probably, and Mario Kart 9 is probably coming in its place. Just think that's a very interesting coincidence.
Yeah, it's like the same situation.
Like, I wonder if maybe what's being said with this rumor is that they heard that rumor way back when, and it's kind of, there's been some, communication potentially. I don't know. I'm just simply pointing out that there's a similarity there. And at the time, people were committed to that happening. It was bogus, right? So it's just another reason to take rumors with a grain of salt. Not saying it's not credible and that this isn't the case. I'm just simply saying, don't buy into it entirely either. But it's tough, dude. But, I want to talk about some things that are a little bit more exciting that I feel pretty confident about in terms of rumors. Like, again, rumor, take it with a grain of salt. But this one's pretty exciting to me. So this is coming from Zippo, someone that has gone a lot of things right in the past. So let's take a look at what they're saying here. So, Zippo, in my opinion, the second half will probably be a lot better than the first. If nothing else, sees a delay. Donkey Kong, Metroid, Mario Party, Fire Emblem, and a mainline Pokemon should all be out before year's end. And I mean, this pretty much lines up with what I've been talking about for a while. You know, a new Donkey Kong and a new Metroid game, I think, are not too far off. Now, I don't think this new Donkey Kong game is going to be a big 3D open world platform. If it is, oh my god, that'd be amazing. I think it might be more either of a 2D or 2.5D kind of Donkey Kong game made by potentially the Mario Odyssey team. So that might be a bit of a stopgap development game for them while they prepare for the next big 3D Mario. But then also there's 2D Metroid. We've talked about how Mercury Steam has probably been developing for a Metroid game for a few years. It could be that, or it could maybe be a Metroid Prime Trilogy, one of those. So those are possibilities there. And then a new Mario Party makes sense. Probably going to get another one.
We usually get like 2 Mario type games a year.
Yeah.
So if we get Mario Tennis, we get Mario Party. That's
Mario Golf.
good.
I've made that mistake before.
Yeah, Mario Golf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mario Golf, Mario Party.
Mario Tennis. You know, I'm glad it's something. It's been so long since we had Mario Golf. I'm glad it's not a Mario sports game we get like all the time.
Right. So Mario Party, Mario Golf, and then also Fire Emblem. We've talked about how, you know, they usually try and do at least one remake between one new Fire Emblem game and another. They could use the Three Houses engine to kind of expedite that development process. With a remake, it takes even less time. They could get out another Fire Emblem game just 2 years after the release for Three Houses. Makes sense?
They could definitely do that.
It's very doable.
For a remake, that's definitely doable.
Yeah, so we could see a Fire Emblem remake, a new 2D Metroid, or maybe Prime Trilogy, one or the other. Something Metroid, right? But not Prime 4.
Yeah, something Metroid.
A new Donkey Kong game, which I hope is more than just a 2D side-scroller. I love those, but I would like to see something a little bit more, maybe. But either way, it'll still be a great game. And Mario Party, like, that's fine. And then Diamond Pearl Remakes, which I believe will be announced this week. That's not bad. Granted, I feel like we need something else, because if you have, let's say it's a 2D Metroid, it's a 2D Donkey Kong, it's a Fire Emblem remake of a 2D game, so maybe it's like not even like a fully 3D game either, right? And then Pokemon, and then Mario Party, like that's not, you know what I mean? Like that's not, there's no like really big ambitious adventure games kind of there, right? There's no Mario Odysseys, there's no Breath of the Wild, there's no Xenoblades. I feel like they should have something like that, right? Now, maybe there is maybe it is a 3D Donkey Kong, you know? That would, I think, would kind of fit that. Or maybe, you know, Prime Trilogy is a Metroid game this year, and it's more than just a basic remaster. Maybe it's something more like Definitive Edition for Xenoblade, you know? Like, that would be amazing. Like, there is some possibilities there for sure. And that's just what Zippo's heard, which I kind of agree with, all of those things based off the reports and the trends. Like, I do feel like those are all likely releases this year. There could still be something else. And actually, I want to point out that there's no mention of Mario Kart in that list. So
True.
I just don't want people to get excited for Mario Kart 9 if it doesn't happen. But it's not out of the question. But if we get a Mario Party, a Mario Golf, do you think it's also, maybe we also see a Mario Kart? It would just be strange to see all this Mario stuff and not have any of it mentioned during Mario's anniversary. You know? I don't know.
Well, it's just that Mario's anniversary, I think, they wanted to focus on the stuff that was coming soon.
Right.
So I could see them not wanting to talk about things that
Sure.
are like late.
But I guess the interesting thing is that if you get Mario Golf in June, Mario Party in like August or September, and then Mario Kart 9 in November,
that's too much
it's
Mario
like,
stuff too close together. Like,
it's like the anniversary never ended. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would think we get 2 of those.
Okay.
You know, one or the other, either a new Mario Party or a new Mario Kart.
Mario Kart's a much bigger deal. I would much prefer a Mario Kart 9 over a Mario Party, but you know.
Yeah, obviously.
Which one's more realistic though? It's hard to say. Yeah. I have to think that there's gonna be more than just Pokemon as like the big holiday release, and it could be maybe Donkey Kong, Pokemon. Maybe those are the 2 big things. I have noticed a lot of people have said or been predicting that Diamond and Pearl Remakes will be the big holiday release for 2021, and that's it. But if you look over pretty much every year we see Pokemon, that's never really been the case. Let's go back to 2020. So in October, we saw the release of the Crown Tundra DLC for Pokemon Sword and Shield, right? Pretty big DLC release, but it's just DLC. But in November, we got Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, correct? So that's kind of like the holiday lineup for Nintendo around that time. It was also Pikmin 3 Deluxe in October. So we got that. In 2019, which wasn't a pandemic year, we got Luigi's Mansion 3 in October and Pokemon Sword and Shield in November. Let's go back to 2018. In 2018, in November, we got Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. And in December, we got Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. You see where I'm getting at here, right? And if we go back to 2017, while it wasn't the 3DS, Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon came out in I think November on the 3DS. But also Nintendo released Mario Odyssey in October and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in December. So Nintendo has consistently published multiple entries during the holidays of fairly big releases. So yeah. I feel like to think that Diamond and Pearl Remakes will be the only big things to come out during Nintendo's holiday this year, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying history suggests otherwise. So I don't think I think there's gonna be something else.
No. I think that the second half will be better than the first half, and I don't think that that would be not even comparable to the first half if all you have is Pokemon and maybe some smaller stuff. Like,
yeah.
I feel like the first half has more than that.
Yeah, I just realized I missed a super chat from Taker610. Let me get to that. Thank you very much, Taker. Only 1 in 4 Switch owners have Breath of the Wild. It's criminal, right? Because we were like it was like a 22 million out of like 82 or something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, but that's still a pretty good attach rate.
But
when you put it in perspective like that, it's like you have a Switch, you don't have Breath of the Wild. What's wrong with you? But you also could consider 3 out of 8 people who have a Switch have Animal Crossing, right? 3 out of 8 people have a Switch have Mario Kart. Like not everyone has all of those. You know, it's kind of strange how that works, but definitely, I think if you're a gamer, you owe yourself the experience to play Breath of the Wild because it is a huge, innovative, groundbreaking experience. Like I feel Breath of the Wild revolutionized how open world games are played. Absolutely, a landmark game. You're right. So I agree that it needs to be played more. So I'm just kind of checking with the chat here.
Well, you get in the chat. I'm gonna be right back. Just
okay. Good luck. The real He-Man 50 centuries ago. Gen 8 Pokemon game soon. Generation 8 being this generation still. Yeah, I think so. I think if Sword and Shield came out in 2019, if we look over the last few generations for Pokemon, they've lasted about 3 years. So 3 years, not about 3 years. The year after, 2020, we got the DLC for Sword and Shield. So I don't think there's really a need to do any more sequels, like an Ultra Sun and Moon kind of thing or a Black and White 2 kind of thing. But I do think they need another entry before the generation is over. They usually come with the game almost every single year. I feel like the DLC is kind of like half a game release, right? So I feel like they kind of need to have like a full game release before the end of the generation. And it is Pokemon's 25th anniversary. So I do think it's very likely there's going to be a game, right? And the rumors have been Diamond and Pearl Remakes, some credible rumors, I would say. That I feel like there's a lot of signs because the majority or the highest number of missing mythicals and legendaries from each region is actually from Sinnoh. And they are a few hundred away from completing the national decks for the Pokemon Sword and Shield generation. So I feel like the best region to focus on for a game to get the closest to completing that national decks is Sinnoh. Not to mention, Mostert has been tweeting out a whole bunch of Psyducks lately, and the biggest, most prominent in-game event that Psyduck has been a part of is Sinnoh, Generation 4 Pearl and Diamond. And historically speaking, Mostert has teased things in the past. Like, for example, in 2018, he just put out a whole bunch of EV tweets for Let's Go Eevee, right? So I do feel like he's teasing something here. I do think it's probably Diamond and Pearl Remakes. That's what everything seems to be suggesting. That's what I believe. That's why I predicted it. So that's what I think is happening for this year. So there will be a Generation 8 Pokemon game. Josh. I mean, Breath of the Wild was supposed to come out during the 30th anniversary, but it came out shortly after the next year, so it's possible the same thing could happen again for Breath of the Wild.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the reason they said that they delayed it was... I forget if it was for the Switch or for Breath of the Wild. It was only because it was cross-gen, though. Like, I'm pretty sure the Wii U version of the game was actually done.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just working on the cross-gen version. So, unless... I mean, it's possible maybe they're like, oh, we want to work on the Pro version still, or the, you know, whatever the Switch version's going to be called version. But I just don't... I mean, they've had way more time, I think, to work on that. I feel like the Switch came in, like, that's like... When Breath of the Wild was originally being worked on, they weren't thinking, oh, we're going to have this Switch that's going to come in and essentially save our entire company. Like, that didn't happen until, like, a few years before the Switch was... or before Breath of the Wild was done. So they weren't working on it the entire time. And also, I doubt that they had... I think the Switch revision will have a lot more time for them to get acquainted with it and get that version ready. So I doubt that they would delay it for that version specifically, which is essentially why it got delayed. The original got delayed. So it's a different circumstance here.
It is. Granted, there's also the pandemic to take into consideration. That has definitely caused some level of a delay, for sure. But it's true. I mean, if you guys watch my videos, right? Whenever there is a rumor, I try not to rely entirely on the rumor. I talk about the rumor, I consider its credibility and the likelihood for sure, but then I try to, always try to push that rumor away and consider everything else and ask myself, does it make sense, right? So let's just ignore the rumors, because again, we go back to the Breath of the Wild rumor, right? Like there's some saying that it's going through localization, others are saying that it might be pushed into 2022. Those sound contradictory, right? So let's just ignore the rumors for a moment and consider what we know. Breath of the Wild 2's development technically started late 2017 from what we've been told. But it is using the Breath of the Wild engine as a foundation. If there's already an engine in place, that can cut down on development by a lot. It speeds things up. This is supposed to be a sequel, and we saw from an interview where AJ Numa confirmed that this game would be returning to Hyrule. So assuming we're actually in Hyrule, yes, they're going to change things around a lot, but there's still like that base there, right? So you got to think it wouldn't take them as long to make this game. Considering that this is Zelda's 35th anniversary, you'd think Nintendo would have some plans. Now, they haven't officially mentioned Zelda's 35th anniversary yet, unless they did something on Twitter during this podcast and I haven't seen it yet. So you gotta think that maybe there's something else planned. We have seen several trademarks for merchandising, for Phantom Hourglass, for Ocarina of Time, for whatchamacallit. I mean, that's what I remember, but there's also, there are several journalists saying that Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD are coming this year. I don't know if that's true, but it's definitely a possibility, right?
Possible, yeah. But
then you look at this direct that happened days before the anniversary. The franchise that got the most mention, the most announcements out of any other was Zelda. There were 4. Age of Calamity DLC, Skyward Sword HD, Skyward Sword Special Edition Joy-Cons, and confirmation that there will be, there's at least plans to have an event detailing Breath of the Wild 2, which, Brandon, you and I agree, seems to be suggesting a blowout. So, if there's going to be a blowout of details, to me, that tells, and granted, we're doing assumptions here, but I feel like that's a fairly safe assumption that they're going to be detailing this game. It's not just going to be a quick little trailer. They've been sort of pushing this off multiple times, right? Well, do you agree with that? Because they've been sort of had multiple times where it's like, hey, look, you just got to wait a little bit longer. We're going to be detailing the game a little bit longer. The next time we see it, it's not just going to be a little teaser.
Given teases then.
Right, exactly. We would have gone the teases beforehand. Instead, I think they're waiting for when they're ready to blow out the game. So we're going to get that this year. That's what they told us. Unless something bad happens, we're going to get a huge blowout for Breath of the Wild 2 this year. So take solace in that alone, that we're going to get news about Breath of the Wild 2 this year at some point. Maybe we won't be able to play it, but we'll at least get news on it. But if they're going to have a huge blowout, it does sound very similar to what we got with Breath of the Wild back at E3 2016. But the interesting thing about that is that would actually support the idea that Breath of the Wild maybe comes out like for March 2022, because that's what happened, right? Breath of the Wild was blown out at E3 2016, and it came out March 2017, right? But there is a caveat here. That was it. There was a cross-platform or cross-gen release with that. They had to rework another version for the Nintendo Switch, and it was discussed that some things were pushed and delayed for that March release for Breath of the Wild and the Switch. So it may have been held back for that reason. Initially, the plan was for the game to come out in 2016, that was delayed. So, I think it is conceivable that Breath of the Wild 2 can come out for holiday 2020 a little bit beforehand, because if it's March 2022, that's a 5-year development cycle. Earlier in the podcast, when we were looking up something else, accidentally, it came up that, yes, Breath of the Wild's development time took 5 years. So if it comes out in March 2022, that's going to be a 5-year development cycle as well. I mean, I guess it's not entirely fair because they started late 2017, so maybe 4.5 years. But should the game only be like take 6 months less time? Like that's
yeah,
that's strange. But there's also the pandemic that may have delayed things under 6 months, right? Potentially more, potentially less though, right? Like if you look at how Smash has been, they're coming out faster than we expected, right? Like there was that initial delay, but all of a sudden now we're getting characters every 2 months, right? So it's kind of hard to say just how impacted Breath of the Wild development is. Nintendo hasn't told us.
Yeah, they haven't said.
So
but there are other projects, and as you said, Smash.
Mm-hmm.
If it's anything like that, it probably wasn't affected that much.
Right.
Maybe
right.
a couple months.
Yeah.
There, but the only reason I could see them taking that long is if they're making like significant changes to the engine and they need a lot of time to work on that.
Yeah.
And we've already seen that they did make changes to the engine. There's a lot of graphical differences between what we've seen of the game in the sequel trailer compared to the original. They've obviously done a good overhaul of the engine and the assets to make it more comparable to what the Switch can do. Use more of that hardware to its advantage. So maybe they're adding a lot of physics-based stuff as well that is new that takes a lot of time. Because yeah, there's some really cool physics-based stuff in Breath of the Wild that took them a long time, but there's definitely room for them to take that above and beyond. There's underwater physics, there's maybe flying physics.
Right.
If, you can fly through the air.
I wanna just take this moment to mention my idea, and we've talked about before, but we're getting Skyward Sword HD. In the Direct, Eiji Newell made sure to mention that there were several changes that happened in Skyward Sword that carried over into Breath of the Wild. And historically speaking, we've seen these different HD remasters of 3D Zeldas be related to the next big Zelda game for the Breath of the Wild series. And they've sort of reassessed Zelda with these different HD remasters, and that has sort of led to some change in the game. To your point, Brandon, how they're going to expand in different ways underwater, perhaps to the sky, and with this focus on Skyward Sword HD, maybe they're going to think of ways of more ways of how you explore and platform through the sky, because you really want to expand upon that open air concept, right? Breath of the Wild is considered an open air game beyond just open world. There's a lot of verticality to it. So you go underground, you go underwater, you go into the sky. Even Hyrule Castle is rising to the sky at the end of the trailer. But another interesting thing to consider is that at the end of Breath of the Wild, you repel the Calamity. The Calamity is wiped from the land, it seems. Obviously not entirely, because there's Ganondorf in the trailer, but there's at least like a temporary piece there. And the idea with that is that they're going to go ahead and repair Hyrule. So perhaps in Breath of the Wild 2, it's been a couple of years that have passed, there's different civilizations that have been built, different towns, different people have returned, perhaps more wildlife as well. We could see more variations of enemy types and animals and such, which brings me to my idea. Loftwings. Yes. They're going to be focused on Skyward Sword HD, but perhaps in Breath of the Wild 2, there'll be a lot of sky exploration. Maybe you don't unlock it immediately, maybe you have to eventually find a really rare Loftwing because they're supposed to be rare, but you find one deep into Hyrule, and you can use this creature to fly into the sky, see islands in the sky. and then all of a sudden, the world of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild 2 is an even greater realization of what Hyrule is. That I hope that happens. It may not, but it would be amazing.
And I'm wondering, because there's technical aspects you have to take into account there too.
Yeah,
they have to adjust all their.
You have to stream an open world that much further into the sky. There's a lot more needs to be done with the way the world loads and things of that nature. Yes, in Breath of the Wild, Go on.
In Breath of the Wild, if you went too fast, or if you went too high in the sky through like glitches or hacks and stuff, the game would noticeably like freak out.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the base game, like unhacked, if you happen to go into an area too fast or something, the game will like literally freeze, like it will stop and it will load. So I imagine that if they're going to do something that is going to have you flying around, you might be faster, you might be dipping to the ground, having to load assets a lot quicker. There's a lot of different implications there beyond even, because that has implications with the glider. And even then, they would kind of break sometimes if you would fall from a really high mountain really quickly. The game could freeze up. So if they have a flying animal, they might really have to change their engine to be a lot more flexible.
Especially with all the crazy physics, right? Like, imagine what other crazy things people will figure out if they add more crazy mechanics like that, where there's a lot more freedom with what you can do, right? Because the different runes gave you a lot of freedom. If you add other things that give you a lot of freedom, with the glowy hand, potentially different mechanics that are involved with that. If Zelda ends up actually being like a companion character that impacts the gameplay and different things you can do, and then you have things like Loftwings that can fly through the sky as well, that's a lot of different things to program for and adjust the physics engine for. That could take a lot of time. So I get that. It could take a while for sure. But I still feel like, given that Nintendo gave us that teaser trailer at E3 2019, I feel like that they had to have thought that the game wasn't going to take this long, right? I'm assuming it comes out 2022, if that's what happens. Like, they have to have assumed that it didn't take that long. It just got delayed, and obviously the pandemic caused that delay. So, while I definitely see it as a possibility that Breath of the Wild 2 might not come out this year, given all the circumstances and such, if rumors weren't impacting my thinking here, I would have been under the assumption that Breath of the Wild 2 is the holiday game for 2021 still. So I'm going to stick with that, because even though there's a lot of credible people suggesting it might not be likely, it's not out of the question, is my point. So you never know. And supposedly there's some credible rumors that are saying they're going through localization. So which one do I choose to believe? I'm just going to choose to not believe either right now. I'll consider them. And just logically for me, I feel like a holiday 2020 release makes a lot of sense. But of course, you never really know, especially with Zelda. It could be delayed. So, we'll see. Obviously, this is going to be an ongoing thing. We're going to be speculating, debating about it all throughout the year until it's finally confirmed. But, I'm going to be optimistic. But either way, Nintendo's going to have things planned for 2021. The second half is going to have some good stuff. So we'll see what happens there. And looking at what we have so far, Nintendo has already kind of created they have at least one kind of big nice exclusive every month so far, So January was nothing, but for February, Bravely Default 2 and 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. March, we're getting Monster Hunter Rise. Guys, don't sleep on this game. This is a really big deal. It's going to be a really good game. I think it's going to be the best-selling third-party game on the Switch for its entire lifetime, or at least up to this point. And I'm really excited about it. It's something that I think a lot of Zelda fans actually might appreciate. A lot of Dark Souls fans might appreciate. A lot of people who like to fight giant boss-like monsters and play with friends. This is a really cool game. It's challenging, but it has a lot of love being put into it. There's a lot of attention to detail in this game. It's a very high quality, ambitious game, and Nintendo's pushing it for a reason. It's gonna be good. So we got that coming in March, and then in April we have new Pokemon Snap. The game looks gorgeous. Brandon, I know you agree with that. You wish the mainline Pokemon games looked like that, right? So
so good.
That's gonna be. I think it's gonna be at least a decent game to play. So we got that to look forward to. Then in May, for your Yumitopia fans, or for those who want to try out a unique style RPG, that's coming out this May. And then in June, we're getting Mario Golf. And, you know, compared to previous Mario Golf games, this one is looking to be pretty extensive. Like, they have the story mode, they have that speed golf mode where you can sort of run around the environment, which looks pretty cool visually. I think it stands out. So that's pretty exciting. And then Skyward Sword HD in July. So, you know, there are games, and obviously there's third-party stuff as well. And actually, August has No More Heroes 3. So there's that. I'm not saying that No More Heroes 3 and Monster Hunter Rise aren't third-party games. They are, but they're also exclusives for Nintendo, right? It's like, so there, but there's also going to be a lot of multi-platform games coming out throughout the Switch's year.
I think it'd be good. From what we've seen so far, the first half's going to be good. I think the second half will be even better.
Yeah, what I want to sort of consider, though, because some people may feel like that it's not that great of a lineup, but I'd be interesting to see, to sort of compare the exclusives for. I mean, we're not talking about multi-platform games, just exclusives, right? The exclusives that are coming to Switch this year compared to previous early parts of the year.
I think it's a good first half of the year. I don't think it's bad in any way.
Yeah, the second half of pretty much every Switch year is always better.
Usually considerably better.
Yeah. So, you know, we'll see what happens. I mean, let's... Can I... just off the top of my head. 2020 had Animal Crossing New Horizons. And Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. And Tokyo Mirage Sessions. And I think there was also... 51 worldwide classics. So how would you compare that lineup to Monster Hunter Rise, New Pokemon Snap, 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, Bravely Default 2, Skyward Sword HD, Miitopia, and Mario Golf?
I think this year is definitely better.
It's Animal Crossing is huge. Like, in terms of sales potential, it's probably not gonna. The software sales won't beat out Animal Crossing. But in terms of variety,
Animal Crossing is kind of like the blip in that that makes it a little bit harder. But
yeah. Yeah, if I go to 2018, I just remember Mario Tennis Aces. There was, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze was ported. Kind of a basic port, but it was ported over. I think there was that one the year they released New Super Mario Bros.? No, that was in 2019, I think, at the beginning of the year. So there was, I think, I want to, am I correct, right? It was a Donkey Kong and Mario Tennis Aces in 2018. I'm sure there's a couple other things. But... I guess nothing that memorable though, right? The second half of 2018 was better with Pokemon Let's Go and Smash Brothers for sure. They relied on DLC a lot that year, I think. Like, there was the Octo expansion for Splatoon 2.
Yeah, that was good.
2019 had New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. I think I think Octopath Traveler was a 2018 game, but I think it was like later into the year.
It was like an August game.
Yeah, so it wasn't the first half is the important point there. And I think the point stands. Like, the fact that I can't remember that much from 2018, like, I think 2020 at least has that one beat. 2017 started in March for the Switch, right? But they had Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Breath of the Wild. And then ARMS, I think, came out in June, if I remember correctly. So that was pretty solid. And then July had... Splatoon 2 came out in July. Yeah, so, I mean, 2017 is probably not going to be beaten. That's just an incredibly good year. But 2021 is off to a decent start.
No, I think it's better than a typical year, the first half, and it's at least comparable.
Yeah. I see that Duncan Corgan saying that Yoshi and Kirby were in 2018. And there's also Bayonetta 2. Yep. That makes sense. Bayonetta 1 and 2 because they're announced at the Game Awards. Thank you. So that does fill up 2018 a little bit for sure. So yeah, that wasn't bad. I see a Cortex bring up. Don't forget about Monster Hunter Stories 2 and Rune Factory 5. Yeah, those are games. Oh, yeah. We don't have a date for Shin Megami Tensei 5 yet. Do we have a date for Shin Megami Tensei 3, the remaster?
I don't know.
Because those are another like little nice exclusive, right? Nocturne. It came out already, 2003.
Yay.
The Switch version.
Thanks, Google.
Why do I have to put it in my country? I guess it's not an exclusive because it's also coming out on PS4. But I mean, it's still a big game. There's also yes, this is a valid date. I was born in that year. Spring 2021.
No.
Spring 2021. That's when it's coming. There's also the Strikers game, Persona Strikers as well. So I mean, there's definitely good games coming.
That's coming this month, I think.
Maybe, I think so. I think Persona. Someone's probably like, "Of course it's coming out this month, you fool! How could you not?" No, because I'm not a Persona fan. February 2020. It already came out. It's been out for a day. So, no.
Nice.
No. This is last year. Maybe it's a Switch version?
I do not know.
No, I don't know. Yeah. Oh, it's coming out really soon. Like, a couple days from now.
Nice.
Yeah, February 23rd. Yeah. So there are definitely games to play. This first half is not bad compared to other first halves. Maybe we'll have like an actual like dedicated video kind of like looking at every main like exclusive Nintendo published games and big exclusives they paid for, kind of comparing each year.
Yeah, I
but
think it's pretty comparable.
Yeah. I see Coloco in the chat. What's up, man? How you doing? He's saying, I think the second half of fiscal year 2021-22 is going to be straight fire.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
Yeah. Sam Plays Games is saying, I have a feeling Breath of the Wild 2 will come out on the 5th anniversary of Breath of the Wild.
It's possible.
It's certainly possible.
Maybe.
We'll see. I think Tugger Sins is saying that 2018 also had Xenoblade 2 DLC. That is true. When did Torna come out? Was it first half?
It was August, I thought. Or September.
That wouldn't count as first half. September.
Sure
Yep, you're right.
half.
September. And it got a physical release. So, I mean, that's a nice release for the year, but it wouldn't count for the first half. Just in terms of comparing first halves of every year. So, you know. But, yeah, we have reason to think that this year is going to be good, even if Breath of the Wild 2 doesn't make it out for the holiday. Nintendo will have some things planned. But, you know, if we wipe away the rumors, I still have hope. But we'll see what actually happens. I just think it makes sense that they consider if Skyward Sword is coming out in the summer, and actually there's one thing to consider. So I've heard some people make the argument that because Age of Calamity DLC, the second wave is set to come out in November, that would sort of suggest that maybe Breath of the Wild 2 won't be coming out around then. Why does it have to come out in November? What if it comes out in October, right? Like, do we have to wait till all the DLC for Age of Calamity is done to start talking about get Breath of the Wild 2?
I think so.
I don't think a lot of people are gonna. I'm not saying people aren't gonna get the Age of Calamity DLC, but I don't think it's gonna be a lot of Zelda fans. I think a lot of Zelda fans are gonna be waiting for Breath of the Wild 2. Not to mention Age of Calamity does not appeal to all Zelda fans.
They barely even talked about it. Like, it was the trailer for the DLC was like 40 seconds. There was pretty much no actual talking. They were just like stuff came on screen. They didn't even read through what was being announced or what was coming.
Yeah.
Like, they really didn't treat it as that big of a deal.
Yeah, the other thing to point out is that it was mentioned separately from the other Zelda announcements. So that's something else to consider.
Yeah.
Like, they may not even really consider it as a big... Like, it's not even, like, internal Nintendo. This is, like, a Koei Tecmo thing, right? Another thing to mention that we didn't talk about, Samurai Warriors 5. I don't know if that's something that excites you, but there is a big new Warriors game coming, so... Yeah. I noticed it, at least, right? Actually, another game... we'll go back... I do want to kind of close out with more Zelda conversation, but there's another game I want to talk about before we do that. No More Heroes 3. So... I'm excited for No More Heroes 3. From what I saw, the gameplay did seem varied, but I am concerned for the game visually. It looks bad. Like, the resolution is...
It does.
It looks bad. Like,
It looks
it
like
looks
an early
fun.
Xbox 360 game.
Yeah, like I some of it's the art style. It kind of looks like they're trying to have a bit of a gritty look to it, like gritty but cel shaded at the same time, right?
But you can make that look good, and they're using Unreal Engine 4, I believe.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you
it's
really
just
could make that look good if you wanted to.
I wonder if maybe they prioritized like performance and just it went with a really low resolution and tried to design the art style around that, you know?
Maybe.
It looks a little rough around the edges, but the game's not coming out till August, so you know this still has time to be polished and improved upon. So we'll see. But I definitely have my eyes peeled for that because No More Heroes is pretty cool. So we'll see with that. And actually, you know, Brandon, I said we would end things with Zelda, but there was a part of the rumor that we didn't really talk too much about on. I was just kind of curious. I don't know if you need me to put it on stream again so you can kind of see the image, but there was the Switch Pro rumors talking about it being like, I don't know what A78 or Ampere even mean. There was also...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pull that back up so I can read it again.
Sure. I'll pull it up for you.
But I remember that part because we were talking about it.
Yeah. And there was another part, I haven't put it on screen, but there was another part talking about how this Switch Pro could be like 3 to 4 times, maybe 5 times more powerful than the base Switch, and if you account for DLSS 2.0, it'll almost be more like 8 to 9 times.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy. I mean, it would be cool. It actually wouldn't be that crazy. Like, the technology's definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
But just reading, I'll just read it out loud because I need to read it anyway. So, A78 and Ampere are both being shared, and Samsung is an open secret for the fab production for at least the sources I'm talking to. Well, that's what I've heard anyways. There's a lot of interesting stuff. Okay, that, don't think that actually continues on any of the information. But yeah, the A78 and Ampere being a thing. I'm not really sure what they mean by A78. I'd have to look into that.
Okay.
But Ampere is the architecture they use for the 30 series cards from NVIDIA, which just came out last year. I think laptop version of it is just now rolling out. So and we talked about this privately, and my conclusion essentially is I don't think it would be Ampere because it just came out. It would be the best technology, especially for mobile hardware, because it's a lot more power efficient. But I'd imagine they would use Turing, because when you look at what the original Switch had and what architectures were out then, they actually had a newer architecture that was already released in mobile chipset form that they didn't use. The architecture that's being used now for the Switch Lite and the battery performant version of the Switch. They had that all the way back in 2017. They didn't use that. So it wouldn't surprise me if, again, they were one generation of architecture behind using the Turing stuff, which, by the way, still supports DLSS, so there's still that big performance boost if they decide to use that feature. But it would be still, and it would be way more battery efficient than what we have in the Switch. It'd be 2 generations up, so it'd be like 2 or 3 times more efficient. It'd be a big boost, but I don't think they would use Ampere. It's just too new, too expensive. It's just now even being made into laptops. It doesn't seem like that would be viable.
Yeah, it's not much I really know about myself. You know, it does sound it does sound like very powerful compared to what the Switch is.
Oh yeah.
It's, I guess, for perspective, right? And obviously the times are changing. The standards of how much you need to improve power by has changed, and it will continue to change. But the Nintendo Wii was technically a next generation system to the Nintendo GameCube, and it was basically just about 2 times more powerful in terms of raw performance. Now, granted, that was like the weakest upgrade ever for Nintendo, but since they did that, they sort of adopted this less powered route compared to the competition since then. So like, it's just interesting to hear that, because we're not even talking about a next generation system supposedly, right? I mean, it kind of comes back to that conversation though. Like, it's a bit of a blurred line situation. Like, what even is next generation now? What is mid-gen refresh, right? But if you go back, about 50. If you go back 15 years, right? About 15 years. Yeah, 15 years. It was 2 times more powerful, the next generation jump for Nintendo. Now, we're not even talking about next generation jump here, and it's a mid-gen refresh, which maybe, this is a grain of salt here, right? Rumor. But 8 to 9 times more powerful is like, what? This is not even next generation system. This is like this is just an enhanced version of what we already have.
I will say it would be pretty comparable to what they did, say, the Xbox One to the Xbox One X. It's pretty comparable because that system was a lot more. I think in terms of just raw GPU horsepower, it's something like 6 or 7 times more powerful.
Okay.
And it doesn't have a magical trick like DLSS to punch in that extra performance out of nowhere, you know?
Yeah.
It was just raw, more powerful.
Yeah.
So what they're saying, like 3 to 5 times more powerful raw horsepower, that'd actually be less than what they did with the PS4 Pro and the Xbox Series X. So it's definitely not like an insane
But
thing
the other
to
thing
think.
is we're talking about mobile technology here, right? So like to make that jump with mobile hardware, like that's more significant. But I guess also like there's also possibly Nintendo doesn't use DLSS 2.0, right? Which that stands for deep learning super sampling or something like that. But basically the idea behind it is that it compiles an image with using like some sort of artificial intelligence to like improve it so it's a higher resolution with less computing power, basically.
Yeah. So essentially,
basically it's a cheat code to get better looking games. That's what it is.
Yeah. It's magic for all people who don't care about what's actually happening. It's magic. It just magically makes your games look better and perform better.
You get more bang for your buck for less. It's like it's still like even it just seems like a quite a boost. It's exciting if that's true, right? I just also wonder like how like I don't want to if we're getting a mid-gen refresh, I really feel like it needs to come out this year. Yeah. But of course, pandemic, Breath of the Wild 2, hard to say. I don't know. I'll also point something interesting, Brandon. You had pointed out to me actually that those Splatoon 3 screenshots looked way too good.
Yes, they do. They look so
maybe
clean.
Let me see if I can pull them up here because I don't know. Nintendo keeps tweeting things. It makes it hard.
They're full 1080p images.
I'll try and pull up for you guys in a moment. But
yeah, but if you look in the trailer, I pixel counted the trailer. The game's only running at like 720p, and you can tell like if you look at the trailer, there's obvious like low resolution artifacts. There's lots of aliasing, but it once he shows you these pictures, you're not gonna see any of that. You're gonna see perfect edges. You're gonna see real clear, crisp image. It's very, very little aliasing.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna put this on screen. You guys are like, what?
Like,
what? I hope there's not too much compression on through YouTube, but it looks I mean, it's a 1080p stream, so you should be able to see it decently. It just looks this looks way better than the trailer. Like, just it's kind of crazy. Let me know, Brandon.
Perfect depth of field.
Yeah, let me know if you can still see everything, because you're looking at the stream, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the stream.
Yeah, let me know if you can see it as I'm changing.
Oh yeah, I can already see it. I see the purple big barrel gun, and now I just saw you change to the blaster image.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the depth of field is in the trailer. It is a thing in the game. It's not something they added to these screenshots, but it looks like perfect in these screenshots. I've never seen depth of field look perfect on the Switch game.
It just looks really sharp.
Usually they lower the resolutions of those effects, so around where the depth of field is being applied, it will look lower resolution than the rest of the image. That's very typical for depth of field. But they didn't do that on this screenshots. It's perfect. It looks so good.
Yeah, it looks really, really clean.
And we were talking about this the other day when we noticed, and I actually went back to the trailer, and that image that, for me at least, you were on with the like crab bomb. There's an image where there's the exact same frame by frame moment in the trailer, and you can tell that the actual trailer was way lower resolution than that image is.
And just seeing all this stuff like up close, like it just looks really good.
It does. Looks very nice.
You know, it kind of reminds me of a little bit, you know, the screenshot mode in Mario Odyssey, a little bit like that.
Yeah.
But this is just like really, like these are zoomed in shots. Like they're
technically, if this isn't like the PC version of the game, like their internal version of the game, or say like a Switch Pro running it, I mean technically maybe it is photo mode, because some photo modes that will reduce the frame rate and up the resolution, like for example Bowser's Fury, if you play the photo mode and docked, it bumps it up to 1080p from 720.
Makes sense.
And then but it runs at 30 FPS.
Because you did the pixel counting, right? Like these images are 1080p. These are 1080p images.
Yeah. And I literally can't pixel count them because there's no aliasing in sight. I tried, but it's not even compression. Like usually compression is the issue I have with pixel counting things, but this is just the edges are too clean. There's not enough aliasing.
It looks
like
good.
There is some. If you look really closely at certain like very like brightly lit or specular objects that like reflective metals or something, you can see a little bit, but it's never like on a straight line where you can clearly see the jagged edges and count the individual pixels.
I wonder if you're going to be exploring like outside this like dystopian society world of the desert. Because like, I mean, what is this shot? Like, it's not in the hub city. It's not a multiplayer map.
No.
We don't even
from the very start of the game.
Well, you don't even see Salmon running behind him though, so I'm not sure. You know,
it could be off screen. But
could be off screen.
Definitely the same. It's
could
definitely
be a
the same
cutscene.
Upside down Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. I mean, these are just a lot of good-looking screenshots, dude. They look pretty good.
Yeah, they look really good.
It's just wow. Oh, it's a whatever they are. They're like different appliances. They look like coffee appliances, coffee makers.
Oh yeah, they look like espresso machines.
Or espresso machines. Yeah, that makes sense. Express teleportation or something.
Oh yeah, maybe that's the idea.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? I feel like we pretty much covered all the screenshots here. Yeah, dude, this game looks great. I don't think it's like a Switch Pro hint, but I think the screenshot mode maybe makes more sense, if anything.
Perhaps.
Yeah. I see another super chat from Taker610. Thank you very much, Taker. Is Switch Pro and Breath of the Wild 2 early 22, Mario fall 2022? A Mario game 2022? It's conceivable, absolutely. Like Bowser's Fury could be like a stopgap until the raid for Mario Odyssey. You know, I'll say that me seeing Splatoon 3, now that I think about it, that kind of pushes up like when Nintendo's ready to start coming out with a lot of these big games, right? Like if they're not going to start slowing down and positioning themselves to launch like a next-gen system in 2023, then instead they may be, you know, maybe they are going to do a lot more cross-gen releases and mid-gen refreshes and things of that nature to kind of extend that Switch's life cycle, right? To the point where there won't be any sort of like slowdown years, you know? And it's just going to be kind of like, if it's slow, it's because of a pandemic, not because Nintendo is winding down for next generation. Because you look at Splatoon 3, like that's the kind of thing you would have thought they would have saved for the next generation, right? And since it's coming out the 5th year of the Switch's life cycle, it does make you wonder, like what is Nintendo's plan there? considering that if Nintendo is going to be having games like Splatoon 3 in 2022, I could also see them having games like Mario Odyssey 2 in 2022. Like, that's not out of the question now.
No, it's not out of the question. I would be super hyped for it. I mean, if we started off the year with Zelda, ended the year with Mario, again, that'd definitely be amazing.
Yeah.
But,
well, it'd be weird, man. If 2022 ends up being like just a repeat of 2017, like,
that'd be nice.
I'd be upset because I had to wait so long for Breath of the Wild 2, but at the same time, like, once 2022 happens, I mean, that's a good-looking year, right? Like, if we don't get a Xenoblade game this year, we get it in 2022 instead, right? Like, oh, wait, what? So you get Xenoblade 3, Mario Odyssey 2, Breath of the Wild 2, Splatoon 3. 5 years ago, you got Xenoblade 2, Splatoon 2, Breath of the Wild, and Mario Odyssey. Like, it's within reason. Or
trades Xenoblade 3 with that other project they're working on. Because I think that will likely come out first. But still, like, a Monolith Soft game.
A Monolith Soft game, yeah.
That'd be hype. I wouldn't be too far against it. Then I'd say, why release the Switch Pro this year? Like, what's gonna be their big flagship title to show off the Switch Pro this year?
Well, it launched.
It's not gonna be Breath of the Wild.
Well, it supports the idea of it maybe coming out March with Breath of the Wild 2, and then Splatoon in summer, Mario Kart 9 in like September, and then Mario Odyssey 2 in like November or something. I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think Mario Kart 9 is gonna be pushed. If Mario Kart 9 is coming, I don't think it's pushed till next year. I think that. No, they're gonna have things this year. They're not gonna not have good things this year. I don't know. Like, it seems too convenient. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit too convenient. It never works out quite like that, you know?
Yeah.
But we'll obviously have to wait and see how things turn out. I guess, you know, we're pretty much nearing. Obviously, we could always go on for more. But if you guys have any sort of interesting points or questions you want to bring up in the chat, please do it now, at me, what have you, so I can notice it. This is probably the last 5 to 10 minutes of the show. Is there anything else you want to sort of touch on, Brandon, before we call it a night?
Anything specific? Honestly, I don't have anything in mind.
I feel like we've definitely touched on a lot of things. I'll talk about something here. Let's talk a little bit about Metroid while we give some people some chance to put out some final questions for the night. Because there was no Metroid announced during this Direct, to me that says probably only getting one Metroid game this year. I'd love to be wrong, but I just don't. I feel like you gotta kind of space them out a little bit. Like, for example, Skyward Sword HD coming out in July gives me some hope that Breath of the Wild 2 could be like a holiday style game, right? But if there was nothing to announce a Metroid for the first half of the year, then when do they announce a Metroid game? I mean, conceivably there could be a summer Direct and they have a Metroid game come out in August and they have like Prime Trilogy like in December. Like, that could happen, but I almost feel like it just makes more sense just to expect one. Like, it's possible we still get two, but I know it was always kind of like maybe not a super good bet to think two Metroid games would come out in a year, but I had a hope that maybe they could do that, right? Now that hope has definitely dwindled, and I'm more
for sure.
Probably we're getting one.
This is when we fall back to my age-old theory.
But it's been pushed back like 2 years.
Yes, but pushed back. We get a Metroid game this year, and then we get either the 2D one or the Prime Trilogy, and then whichever one doesn't come out this year comes out next year. And then either that holiday or I think maybe even the next holiday, we get Metroid Prime 4. And then you get the Metroid content spread out. Because I do think it's a little bit optimistic to think that two Metroid games would come out this year when Metroid's been like pushed back for so long. You think even if they had something that maybe was ready, they might want to space it out so that they can have Metroid coming out more consistently. rather than just being like, we haven't had Metroid in like forever, but boom, here's 2 Metroid games, and we'll see you in a few years for Prime 4.
I'll tell you this: if Breath of the Wild, if we're talking about Breath of the Wild 2 being a 2022 game, this game was in development since 2017. It shows trailer in 2019. We haven't even gotten a trailer for Metroid Prime 4, like 2023. Yeah. I don't want to wait that long for Prime 4, but it's absolutely a possibility, right? I'm sure some people think it won't come out till 2024. I don't believe that, but you know, if they started from scratch in 2019 and it takes them 5 years to make Metroid Prime 4, which is not how long games normally take to develop, just for the record.
No, that'd be a ridiculous time.
Then 2024. But here's the other thing. Metroid Prime, like, they restarted development in 2019. They announced the restart in January of 2019, but they probably actually restarted a few months beforehand, right? They wouldn't announce it like weeks later. So there's that to consider. But then, how much longer does it take? And also, even though they restarted development, they did not have any sort of storyboarding or planning that they couldn't like have used as somewhat of a base, you know? Like, would they really just start entirely
they just
from
threw
scratch?
away all the assets. Complete art style change. Can't use anything from that original build.
I don't know.
Those alien worlds they crafted, nope, trash, garbage. Get them out of here. Throw them in the garbage.
Yeah, I don't know if they would just do it entirely from scratch. But even if they did, Kensuke Tanabe is still the producer. He still has some ideas for the story and such. Like, I feel like at least some of those ideas have to translate over. I'm just saying, like, that's got to save some time, right? Maybe? So, point is, like, Prime 4, how long is it really going to take to develop? Like, I feel like, yeah, maybe 2023, but I feel like holiday 2022 is not a stretch. But, you know,
it's not insane. Man.
We'll see, because I also thought Breath of the Wild would come out holiday 2020, and now we're talking about coming out in 2022, like, not even necessarily, like, March 2022, like, later. I hope that's wrong. I hope that rumor is not true, but, you know, you never really know. So, we'll see with that. Dumo plays 5 years to reuse the map in Breath of the Wild with Monolith. They did say Breath of the Wild 2 news was coming later in the year. Yeah, if I ignore rumors, I think Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out holiday 2021, but rumors are suggesting otherwise. So I don't know.
Yeah, and at this point, you gotta also say, even if it does come out holiday 2021, that's still a long time for what the game for a sequel. So we're already in the part where it's like already taking a very long time. So taking a few more months isn't like, oh my gosh, insane.
Yeah.
You know, we're already to the point where we're like, how's this game? Like, we thought the game could easily have come out last holiday. So we're kind of at the point to where adding a few more months is negligible difference for that kind of theory or logic. Doesn't really affect it.
Yeah, I see some really interesting comments in the chat. Doom, man, I should have brought you onto the podcast today. I'm sorry. Maybe we should come on next week. But he brought up I think a nice point. Rumors suggested that there was a direct every week for the past 500 plus days. Not wrong. And this is me tooting my own horn a little bit, right? But I predicted that there would be a Nintendo Direct this week that just happened. I was like, not many people were doing that, right? But the reason I predicted it wasn't because of any rumors. It was because it just seemed like a logical conclusion based off what games had been announced, what games Nintendo needed to announce, and where I feel like Nintendo has been with the different games that they have in the works, right? So because of that, I was like, this makes sense. Especially also because a few other elements are because of the Pokemon stuff that needs to happen at the end of this month, and then also Nintendo needed to talk about some Zelda things. They didn't have a Zelda-focused Direct, but they did make multiple Zelda announcements, right? So, but that's what led to my prediction. It wasn't based off any rumors, and it was right. So, obviously, you can't always get that right. Yes, there's some luck there. But the point I'm getting at here, just to kind of side with what Doom was saying, is that rumors don't tell you everything. Sometimes you don't know what's going to happen at all. And sometimes, maybe when it comes to speculation, it's better to just kind of rely on like hard information, like what that tells you, or logical deduction. I feel like considering all the different variables is what kind of gives you like the best chance at the picture, but it's hard to always say, right? So, we don't know what's actually going to happen. There will be surprises. Another interesting thing to consider here is Smash Brothers. Yes, Brandon and I have been talking about Rex and Pyra getting a Smash Brothers for years, but like overall with the DLC for Smash Brothers, people haven't really been able to leak it as consistently as they used to, So how much is actually being leaked? How much do we actually know about Nintendo's plan from rumors and such? I'd say we don't know as much as we'd like to, right? There were rumors for a Splatoon spin-off. It ended up being Splatoon 3 instead, right? So we'll see what happens. I think there's still plenty of room to be excited for what's to come. And again, as we talked about earlier, if we compare the lineup of games we have to start this year compared to the early starts for other years, this is not a bad start. And as you noted earlier, Brandon, the second halves for pretty much every year are significantly better. So I think we still have a lot to look forward to.
For sure.
I see a question here from Ronnie Fazio. Nintendo announces Metroid Other M HD for $60. What is your reaction? No new content? Not buying it. I liked the game. I enjoyed it, but I also got it for $7 on a random summer, and it was great. I
haven't heard the best things about that game. I haven't played it, so maybe
it's fun, man.
I might buy it.
It's not a perfect game. You had to play on. Here's the thing: it would be better on the Switch because they would have to change around the controls because the way Metroid Other M worked, you play with the Wii remote. Do I have my Wii remote in here? No, I don't. But you have to play with the Wii remote, right? This skinny little vertical thing, and you'd play with the D-pad and the other buttons there, like the 1 and 2 buttons.
That's horrible.
Yeah, and the A button, like that, and then minus and plus, like that was your control.
Sideways Wii remote is honestly horrific. Like people complain slightly about sideways Joy-Con. Sideways Wii remote is 100 million times worse.
But wait, Brandon, there's even more to this, because it was a 2.5D game. Like it wasn't like 2D gameplay. Like you could sometimes like go back and forward and down hallways and stuff, but usually it was side scrolling. But it was more to it than that, because you also could, because the environments were still 3D, you could actually flip the Wii remote from horizontal mode in real time and point at the screen. And when you would do that, the game would switch to first person mode. You'd be stationary, but you could look around in first person, aim and shoot, and you get an entirely different perspective of the environment you're exploring from. From one perspective, it looks like a 2.5D kind of game, kind of like Donkey Kong Country, right? The ones that Retro Studios made. But then you switch to first person mode, all of a sudden you can see everything in like first person 3D, right? So that was like the basic gameplay there. Now,
it's like Super Paper Mario.
It's cool. It was a very cool concept, but in practice, it was very awkward, in my opinion, just to hold the Wii remote, because wasn't a great like horizontal holding controller in general. But then to have to, especially if you're in combat, right, you would have to then change the way you're holding the controller. Instead of doing like this, like that, and then you have to position, aim at the casino, depending on your setup with the icarus sensor on the Wii, it might be a little awkward, and that transitions to first person mode, which you are stationary in while looking around, right? Imagine having to do it during the combat. You could do it if you were good, it would work, but there was some awkwardness with that transition, is my point, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of the issues of the game. But another issue was that people did not like the story. They felt like it really made Samus. They made Samus seem too vulnerable, perhaps too immature. It wasn't really the typical portrayal of what Samus is. And part of that challenge is that Samus isn't normally voice acted, right? This is a voice acted Samus. And, there's some of that in there, but also you could argue maybe the story wasn't really that good to begin with. So there's some debate there, but that was part of why Metroid Other M got a lot of hate. And the other thing, personally, that I despised were the "Where's Waldo" moments. So if you're not familiar with Where's Waldo, that's like, if you ever seen like those books where there's like a little character hidden in within a million things on a couple pages, and you have to find Waldo. Well, Metroid Other M had that. So you would go into first person mode sometimes, and you might not even be able to progress in the game at all, and you have to look for some random thing on screen and point at that and scan it or shoot it. And there were a couple points in the game where I was stuck for an exorbitant amount of time thinking I'm never going to get past this. That was frustrating. So, you know, Metroid Other M had its issues, but despite all the things I'm saying, I still thought it was cool. I still was intrigued by the story. I still wanted to learn more about the Metroid world. I still enjoyed the gameplay. It was very fast-paced. The visuals were great on the Wii. The first-person modes were still cool to see, shooting missiles and getting to see things from that perspective. And the boss fights, like, it was still a fun game. Like, the combat and the gameplay were still pretty darn cool. So I enjoyed the game, but I definitely, I feel like I got my fill. If all the games to remake or remaster, don't do Other M. Don't do it. Please no. Something else, please.
Yeah, no. Pretty sure Nintendo realizes that though.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. ZX here. No Zelda Direct soon, right? I'm not expecting one.
Don't expect one though.
Not this month. Imagine they did. What if like tomorrow, like, oh, there's a Zelda Direct tomorrow. So we get a Zelda Direct on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, like, oh, there's a Pokemon Direct tomorrow. So we get a Pokemon Direct on Thursday.
Tomorrow they're just like, oh, remember when we said you had to wait for Breath of the Wild? We were talking a whole several days.
5 days or 6 days or something. That'd be
a whole week.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then they'll say
blowout.
What'll happen is like, oh, so the release date for Breath of the Wild 2 is actually November 2020. It came out already. It's actually Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Enjoy. Yeah. Man, that'd be. Oof. You get us excited and you bring us right back down.
We're actually rebooting the development of Breath of the Wild 2. Sorry. It will come out in 2030.
Yep.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, assuming there isn't an apocalypse by then. Let's see here. Joshua Ayers, random question, Andres. When do you think Donkey Kong will release this year? Do you think it might be a holiday title after a possible summer E3 Direct? That's tough to say. It depends on what is this game? Like, is it a 3D Donkey Kong made by the Mario Odyssey team that kind of satisfies like that big holiday release? If so, then I would argue maybe October or December or November, that window, right? Is it more of a 2.5D kind of game? Then maybe September or October. At this point, though, if it is coming, I think it's pretty safe to say that it's a second half of 2021 title, because it was not presented in the Direct talking about the first half of 2021. So we pretty much already have our lineup for that. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And it's probably not like, I mean, maybe August, but I'm gonna assume not August.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say September at the earliest, and I'd love to be wrong, you know, but I'm just gonna stick to second half of 2021. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Do you think Donkey Kong's even happening yet, Brandon? Have you been convinced yet, or still no?
No, I have not been convinced. I'll believe it when I see it. It's not that I don't like really think it's not gonna happen. I just don't think it's gonna happen either. I'm just like, okay, it could happen, but I'm waiting to see.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I see a comment here from Dumo, which seems a little interesting. I looked up something interesting today. PS4 has sold 114 million units. They have one game over 20 million units sold. Nintendo has 6, with 2 of those being over 30. And they're only at around 80 sold. That is very interesting. The games sell very, very, very well on Switch. But I think we've pretty much reached the natural conclusion for this podcast. It's getting a little late. Do you have any final thoughts, Brandon?
I think it was a good Direct. Looking back and talking about it as much as we have, Originally, I gave it like an 8 out of 10. I'll lower that down to like a 7 out of 10.
You see? I no longer...
You're trying to say it's like a 5 out of 10. Definitely do not agree with that.
6 out of 10.
7.5.
6.5.
7.5 is my final answer. But no, I think
maybe
it was
7.
good.
I mean, my initial thing was 3.5. I don't... but
yeah.
Are we reviewing it like video game scores, or are we reviewing it like a movie? Because we're reviewing like movies, it's 2.5.
Like movies, I guess, because movies you can have like a 60 that's still good. A video game gets a 60, it's like absolutely the
trash.
Worst game that's ever.
Did you ever see Da Vinci Code?
Planet.
You ever see Da Vinci Code?
The movie? No,
Yeah.
But I've seen it's on Netflix.
Well, like that movie got like 2.5 out of 5, like 2.5 out of 5 stars, and that movie I think is pretty good and entertaining, right? Like, so that's like kind of like my perspective with rating directs. Like, it's just a number. I think it was a middle of the road direct. I don't think it was the best direct ever. I don't think it was the worst direct ever. I think it was somewhere in the middle. I think to get things started, it was fine. Mainly my thing. My two primary criticisms are that, one, I think there is this great expectation for Breath of the Wild 2, and we're sort of let down, but maybe that's on us, right? But Zelda Anniversary, should we? Is that really on us? But the other thing is just that I feel like, for I guess the more of the typical core Nintendo fan, I just don't think they had enough announced there, right? And instead they announced things like Splatoon 3 and Triangle Strategy, I think, do appeal to that core Nintendo fan, but they're coming out in 2022. Sure. Like, why couldn't they have... If Metroid and Donkey Kong are coming out in, like, September or October, why didn't you announce those instead, you know?
Maybe they just want to have the biggest, most kick-ass middle-of-the-year direct.
Maybe.
Just be like, haha, we're back, boys.
Maybe.
Take this.
Maybe so.
Also... like, Microsoft's biggest releases are coming out second half, like God of War and Halo are both coming out holiday, so maybe they want to really bolster up their holiday and talk about it a little bit later.
That's the whole other thing. Like, Nintendo's not going to look great if they don't have at least Breath of the Wild 2 kind of ready around that time. You know, like, if you have a 2D Donkey Kong game, a 2D Metroid game, Pokemon, and Mario Party, that's not gonna look too great next to God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn the Second. I forget the name of it. Final Fantasy 15 is probably not coming out this year, but that's like, you know, some big games from Sony, and then you have like Halo Infinite. So yeah, we'll see what they do. There's probably some good stuff coming, but we'll see. But yeah, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you soon. Make sure to check out Brandon's channel, by the way. It's linked in the description below.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
So yeah, take care.